complies with the setbacks. However, there's some existing non-conforming issues. The elevator is accessory to the steps, and the location appears to be the most suitable location based on the floor plans and a location in the existing AC unit condensers, which currently comply with setbacks. The only place it could go would be in the front yard. I don't think we want an elevator shaft in the front yard. The setback variances are for the elevator shaft exterior only and are de minimis, in my opinion. More than likely, one side yard does not comply. This affects the combined side yard setbacks. And again, it's basically a hardship case, and C1 and C2 criteria should be met and testified to. It concludes my report.
Is the applicant here?
Good evening. I'm Robert Schwartz. I'm counsel to Brad and Stephanie Spector, co-trustees of the Stephanie J. Spector Trust, the owners of the property located at 9135 Fremont Avenue, Block 525, Lots 2 and 2.1 in the S40 zoning district. The property is currently used as a two-story single-family residence. The application before the board this evening seeks approval to install a 36-square-foot elevator with access points on both the first and second floors of the residence. A variance for a side yard setback and combined setback is required. The proposed setback is 5.16 feet from the side yard. The required setback is 10 feet, and the existing setback is 10.12 feet. In support of tonight's application, we will present testimony from Craig Dothey of Craig F. Dothey LLC Architects and Planners. Ms. Dothey. It's my understanding that Mr. Dothey has testified before this board as an expert on numerous occasions. Accordingly, would the board stipulate that Mr. Dothey is an expert in planning and
Yes.
architecture? Thank you.
Would you like to swear him in at this time?
Yeah, please swear in.
Mr. Dozer, just state your name and business address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Craig Dothey, 33 North Brighton Avenue, Langston.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Dothey, were you retained by Mr. and Mrs. Spector on behalf of the owner of the property to install an elevator at 9135 Fremont Avenue?
Yes, I was.
Did Mr. and Mrs. Spector advise you as to the reason why they wanted to install an elevator in the home?
It was twofold.
Craig, would you use the microphone, please? Thank you.
It was twofold. One, he has a mother-in-law who has difficulty getting up and down the stairs. Plus, Brad and his wife are getting a little up there themselves, and they're looking at staying in the house as long as they possibly can.
Have you reviewed and are you familiar with the application and plans and submissions submitted to the board for approval of the installation of the elevator?
Yes, I am.
Did you prepare the plans?
Yes,
In preparation for tonight's meeting, did you have occasion to visit the site?
yes.
Can you describe the location of the property and the existing condition of the site?
I'm looking at the site plan.
Call that A1, site plan.
Thank you.
What it is it's a fully developed 7-bedroom, 3-car garage, 2-story house with 6 cars parking. There's a outdoor swimming pool, boat slips on the bay, and it's approximately 5,500 square feet. So it's a significant house. It's at the end of Fremont Avenue and Benson Avenue, right where they come together, and it's along Amherst Avenue.
In your opinion, based upon the shape of the lot, is this the only location for the elevator on the site?
Yeah, I originally looked at, the house itself, whether or not it was possible to carve into the house and build it on the inside, or where it would go around the outside. Along the Fremont Avenue side, it's garages, front entranceway, and a side yard setback. Across the back, of course, is the decks and, of course, the swimming pool. And along this side, which faces 9205 Amherst Avenue, we looked at that area as well as along here at Amherst. Along Amherst Avenue is where we have our air conditioning condensing units, and we have a round turret around on the corner. So obviously, it couldn't go in those areas. So what we did was, we located it in such a way that it would be the least offensive location possible. And that was right directly behind the turret, so the turret helps to shield it. And it's across from a solid wall and the air conditioning units of the house next door. There are two small windows that are in the den that face towards this house, and then a solid wall. And then there are two kitchen windows that are also fairly small. And they're pretty far away. They're like 15 feet away, 18 feet away from the proposed elevator shaft shown right here. When it gets built, it'll still be greater than 5 feet to the property line, and there's over 13 feet of space between the two houses. So and it's only a 2-story house, so it's not like it's a 3-story house.
Will the exterior blend in architecturally and aesthetically with the rest of the existing residents?
Yes, it will. The turret has a copper roof and is round. It's got a lot of trim around the eaves, the windows, that sort of thing. Right where the turret curls back in against the building, that's right where the elevator's gonna go. We're matching the wainscoting across the bottom and all the finishes on the side wall, as well as the roof.
You noted that the installation of the elevator in this location requires a variance from the current setback, correct?
Yes.
Do you see any detriment to the public good by the granting of this variance?
No, I really don't, because I believe that it is in a place that does not diminish light and air to the next door neighbor's house, as well as it's basically hidden back behind the turret, so you'll barely be able to see it from Amherst Avenue or the other one.
Mark that exhibit A2. please. Do you see any impairment to the township zoning plan as a result of this plan?
No, I don't.
And not to interrupt you, A2, I'm going to call the elevations.
Okay, thank you.
What's very interesting about this particular piece of property is it's a very large piece of ground. It's a 14,000 square foot piece of ground, and the minimum requirement's 4,000, so it's significantly larger than the minimum requirements. The lot width is larger than the typical width, it's almost 62 feet. The front yard setback on the one side is 17.8 feet, and on Amherst Avenue is over 70 feet. So there's a lot of light and air around this building. There's a significant amount of landscaping, far greater than the minimum requirement, and the building coverage itself is significantly less than the maximum building coverage.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Does the board have any questions?
Is the elevator serviceable from the outside?
No,
Is it an internal elevator?
yes.
You don't show the fence being put back or on the plans?
Yeah,
There's a fence that's here now.
the fence is behind the turret itself, and what we're gonna do is, we're gonna put the gate right at the back end of
Okay.
the elevator.
Microphone, please.
Any way for wheelchair access from grade to first floor?
No, not at this time.
But it could be added on later to,
Yeah, like a lift of some sort, maybe from the back
well,
or
I'm
something.
thinking of somebody coming in at street level, being able to access that elevator
Yeah.
in some way, so that's a possibility.
Oh, it's always possible to take care of at the front or at the back.
Have you talked to the neighbors about this at all?
There's a neighbor across here that has the brick,
Immediately,
Apart?
immediately adjacent to the elevator. I
okay,
assume you know those,
yes, I know this guy
I
fairly
guess you
well.
would.
And they both know each other very well, and he said that he's all in, he doesn't bother him.
And you're very familiar with them.
I'm a little familiar with this particular house.
Anything else from the board? Anyone here from the public like to comment? Public portion is closed. Any further discussion from the board? Leo, would you read a motion?
Sure. And just, Mr. Schwartz, you looked at Mr. McLaren's report.
I did.
No issues with that?
I had no issues with
Okay.
that.
So we need a motion for C variance relief to grant a side yard setback of 5.16 feet where 10 feet is required, and a combined side yard setback of 15.43 feet where 22 feet is required, with the conditions being anything contained, those conditions contained in Mr. McLaren's report dated February 22nd, 2018.
Tom Collins?
Obviously, the size and shape of the lot cause a hardship only because of the way the house is situated on it as it stands right now. I'm sure the way I've seen Mr. Dothe design things, that you're going to have this so it blends in. It's going to be very de minimis. I don't see that it has any negative criteria in terms of negatively impacting the neighbors or any of the adjoining areas in that zone. So I vote in favor.
Clem Wozzeski?
This elevator shaft would be hardly visible from maybe 10 degrees on a 365-degree radius, not only from Amherst Avenue, so I think its impact on the public at all is almost negligible. And I certainly trust in the architect to do something that would enhance the existing structure considerably, because it's under the zone. I definitely approve.
Rich Patterson?
I vote yes for the same reasons as the two prior board members.
Jim Galantino?
I don't see any problem with voting yes. I just want to make sure they put the fence back to protect against the pool.
Craig Palmisano?
Yes, there's no detriment. It's a nice project for you. Everybody needs an elevator. There will be. Some of these higher homes will be needing them. I approve it.
Remy Pelosi?
For the same reasons the other board members approve, I do as well.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, they're still maintaining the minimum 5-yard setback, and I really don't see anything that's going to impact the neighborhood, so I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 7-0. Please come sign.
Next case is Jeffrey and Joanne Silva, 500 North Thurlow Avenue, Block 721, Lot 25, in the S40 district. To grant a C variance for landscape coverage, distance from principal structure to the pool, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLaren?
Thank you, Board Chairman, board members. I did not write a report for this application. The board recently recommended and was recently approved by the governing body to amend the distance from the pool to a horizontal structure from flush to 3 feet, and obviously they do not comply with that. Therefore, they were seeking a variance. And the applicant will discuss the landscape variance request also, and that concludes what I have to say.
Mr. Goldstein?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants Jeffrey and Joanne Silva. By way of background, Mr. McLaren pointed out the ordinance recently changed to require a 3-foot distance from a principal structure or closest vertical member to the water's edge of a pool. And as the board knows, unfortunately, there was a case where a pool was installed in a front yard without a permit, coming to the board after the fact for a variance, which wasn't a great thing to do. Additionally, there were a number of homes constructed where the pool was flush against the house. Most unfortunate as well, one of those homes was constructed on the actual pool deck itself. The board, in response to some of the more aggressive construction of pools, recommended to the governing body to remove the pool from being flush against the house, so the ordinance requires a 3-foot clearance around the entirety of the pool. In the present instance, had Mr. Silva and his wife come to the board in October or up until November 16th of last year, we wouldn't be here. Actually, he wouldn't have had to go to the board. He would have gone to the zoning officer and to Mr. Galantino, and the permit would have been granted. He wanted to wait because he wanted to make sure that the right size pool was ultimately installed at the property, and now we're here. Mr. Silva and his wife recently purchased the property from Carmen Roan, who, as you know, subdivided a lot and built a house directly next door. I've been in contact with Mr. Roan today. He is the neighbor who this affects the most. He is in favor of this. Unfortunately, he said he could not be at the meeting tonight, but he told me, for what it's worth, I can give his representation, and as an officer of the court, I would not be telling you a lie, that he is in favor of this application. So when he looks out at the pool from his house and sees the Silvas in their pool, he is not going to be objecting. Having said that, Mr. Silva's here. He's going to give some brief testimony, and then I'd like to discuss with the board, obviously, the placement of the pool. So Jeff, stand up, please. Mr. Manos will swear you in.
Jeff, just state your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Speak into the microphone, Jeff.
Jeff Silva, 500 North Thurlow Avenue.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Jeff, you and your wife and your children recently relocated here from Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes.
And you are now full-time Margate residents, correct?
Yes.
And unlike a lot of the Margate residents, you're not really fond of the beach, correct?
Well, it's a far walk from Thurlow, 500 North.
But it was your goal to put in as big a pool as possible at your property and ultimately have space for your family in the rear yard to enjoy a fairly decent-sized pool, correct?
Yeah, I convinced my wife to move down here if we can get a pool, so.
Well, you're going to get a pool. It just depends on how big it is and where it goes. And in preparing for tonight's application, you looked at a couple of designs of pools and ultimately went with the pool that, even when it's installed, if it was granted by the board to be a foot from portion of your house, and actually it's 5 feet, just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, from one portion of the house, but it's 2 feet from an air conditioning condenser stand, and the ordinance talks to the closest vertical member. So on the picture you have in front of you, there is a portion of the boxed out pool which seems like it's farther away from the house. That's because it is. It's just close 2 feet from the air conditioner condensers. The other side is 1 foot from the side of 500 North Thurlow House. So when you were designing your backyard, you wanted-
Eric,
Yes.
would you go over that again? I'm confused.
Okay. The pool itself on the photo, or the photo,
This is 5 feet over here?
no, that's 1 foot. But if you look directly down on the bottom right corner,
Right?
there are 5 feet from the house to the edge of the pool. But the air conditioning condenser platform is 3 feet wide, so the pool is actually 2 feet from the air conditioning condenser platform.
Are you saying the air conditioning
The air conditioners
platform
are gonna
would not
stay
be
there?
moving?
The air conditioning condenser platform is going to stay,
That would stay right where
because
it's
we have to
at?
keep the air conditioner up above base flood, and that's really the only place it can go. The pool equipment will comply, just so you know, as will the generator, with all of the setbacks. We're not attempting to move any of that into the setback, and if need be, Jeff can put the pool equipment in his garage, which the ordinance recently changed. They'll have that above base flood, but not taking up a parking space, which Mr. Galantino, I'm sure, will confirm if and when this is built.
Why
Now,
can't,
is,
why can't he put the air compressor on the garage roof?
Pretty high up.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
It's not a detached garage, it's attached, and the garage roof's actually the second
There's
floor
a
of the
room,
house.
there's a room above the garage.
How about hanging off a wall? With brackets.
I mean,
Do you know a builder?
yeah. There's a window back there, so it'd be kind of difficult to do.
How
How
much is 2 feet? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Most logical place for the equipment would be next to the air conditions, or if it's too tight, I can go right to the wall, and the garage ceiling inside is pretty high, good 10, 12 feet.
How much is 2 feet and how much is 5 feet? You said it's 5 feet from the house, but in
5
a
feet?
certain portion, it's 2 feet?
Correct, so it's 5 feet from the house, but off the rear of the house, the air conditioner and generator platform is built 3 feet wide.
Oh, so that for the entire length of the pool?
No, just for the
The width of the pool?
correct, the width of the pool.
This orange piece on here?
That's correct.
Yes.
back of the garage to the far edge of the air conditioning.
It's 3 feet. From the back of the garage, the platform's 3 feet wide, and then from there, it's 2 feet to the pool.
So you're moving the air conditioner
No,
units?
No.
staying where it is.
No, they're there now.
I thought they were on this side.
Clem, your microphone,
Right there.
please.
They're on this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you have 8 feet from the property line to the pool. So if you move the pool over 2 feet, then you're still in compliance with the setback, and you'd have 3 feet
That's correct.
from the pool to the building.
Mr. Richmond, the idea there is to have enough room for a couple chairs, and the chairs are 6 feet wide with a little bit of room between the chair and the pool. They're not going to take up any more impervious coverage because they're going to leave that area grass. So the surrounding area of the pool will be grass, not looking for additional pavers. In fact, all of the pavers you see on those photos are getting removed. So pavers come out, pool goes in. They just want enough room from the edge of the pool to their fence to put a normal-sized chair and to have room to, hang out with the kids.
Is your house on fire?
Eric,
I don't know.
I can't hear
I'm
you.
wondering the same question. I don't know.
Well, you better make sure it is on piling. If you dig down for a pool a foot away from the wall, you're gonna undermine your footings.
If the application is granted, obviously, we're going to make
Yeah,
sure
for
everything's
sure.
done correctly.
Eric, did you say that you're 5 feet away from the building foundation?
The pool will be 5
5
feet from
feet.
the foundation, correct?
So you're
It'll
not
be-
gonna be digging up next to the building. So according to
yes, he
this
is.
picture here that you're showing us, this corner to that corner of the building where the cable box is, or the phone box,
Correct.
there's 5 feet there.
No, that side of it, Mr. Collins, is 1 foot. The 5 feet is from the rear of the house. You're looking at the side of the house. The rear of the house to the edge of the width of the pool is 5 feet. That side is 1 foot.
And none of this
Got it.
pool is going to go underneath that air conditioning platform?
100% not.
Absolutely not.
Correct.
Got it.
Well, the obvious question is, why don't you move the pool 2 feet towards Carmen's?
As Mr. Richmond asked earlier, it's just to have a little bit of additional space for chairs.
You get smaller chairs.
Actually, Clem, if he has children, he's better off with the wider spot to the fence and room for chairs and for them to sit than to squeeze him. So if they start running on either side, it's gonna be worse. From a safety and a community point, this is a better application than if he did.
Now,
not.
this is also very important, and I know this, Mr. Palmstad, and the other people find this important. After we submitted the application for the variance, Jeff and I discussed emergency personnel and how police and firemen are going to get in and out. There is currently no door off the back of the house or the side of the house. As part of this application, and whether it's granted or not, he's going to do it. The second picture shows where a door is going to go into the garage. This has already been applied for. I think Jeff submitted the plans a couple days ago to Mr. Galantino's office. So, in addition to the layout of the backyard as it will stand with the pool, assuming this is approved, there will be a door installed into the garage so emergency personnel can get in and out 2 different ways. They'll have enough room around the pool if they need to get into the backyard, and the pool won't block anything because there's a door immediately adjacent to where the pool is going to be installed that they can go right in. This whole concept was to give Jeff and his family as much pool space as possible and as much backyard space as possible, but he knows there's a give back, and he knows he can't just have it all his way, which is why he agreed, and not very reluctantly, he agreed like that, to go ahead and put the door in on the side of the house. So, with the door being on the side of the house, with an 8-foot walk around on the side and the rear yard of the house, we're really talking about 5 feet from the rear of the house and 1 foot from the side of the house. The only reason we would need the variance on the rear is because the vertical member of the air conditioning platform is directly next to the house, and you've got house, platform, and then pool.
Eric, maybe this is what confused me. That's not the air conditioner. What's that wood in the corner? Is that stairs or what is that?
That is the generator part of the platform.
Oh.
That's also being moved.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was
So-
my confusion, so.
Obviously, this is the type of case where it's 100% the board's discretion. Now, when Jeff and I talked about coming in earlier, he said, I want to wait, I want to make sure I do everything correctly. I want to put in the permit for the door after we started to discuss this. So, you know, if it's October, the pool's already applied for and it's granted, the very reasons this board wanted to pass your new ordinance, he's complying with. It's not an after-the-fact whoops, but we still want to have our big pool begging for forgiveness, and he's not building a new house where the structure is being built on the pool deck, which obviously upsets the board as it should. So in this case, he's done everything. He just wants literally a couple of extra square feet for young kids to play in the pool and, you know, to enjoy his backyard.
Eric, I think the 1 foot on the side of the pool is definitely not enough. It's definitely not enough. You need access for all sides of the pool. Because if you don't have the access for that side of the pool, people have to jump in the pool to grab a youngster and pull them out. So, and if you have to wait for police and fire to come there, sometimes that could be 3 to 5 minutes. So the safety issue for myself is to be able to access all sides of the pool, to be able to walk around the pool. That's why we went with a 3 foot around all sides of the pool.
Yeah, the foot is tight, but on that side of the pool, there's really nothing. It would be,
It's up against the house. You'd have to jump in the pool to grab a youngster out of the pool without walking around the pool and grabbing them from the side of the pool.
yeah, I mean, that's correct. Yeah.
What's the actual width and depth of the pool?
Pool's 10 by 20, which to the water's edge is actually a little
And how
less.
deep?
5 foot.
5 foot.
Yeah. We thought about putting a smaller pool in like a 10 by 16 and just felt that that was really tight for kids to be jumping in and so forth. And just thought a few extra feet would be a little bit safer for them.
And as the board is aware, there are more than dozens of pools up against the house on every side in the town, which, you know, we're not fond of, but they're there. We're not
Well, that's
looking-
why we passed the ordinance.
Not
Right.
So that
anymore.
wouldn't happen
And-
anymore.
And we're doing our best to comply as much as we can. But, you know, off the one side, it's not an issue because there's plenty of room. It's just 2 feet from the air conditioning condenser. On the other side, that foot will matter. You know, we're always here fighting over inches and feet, not yards and, you know, the amount of deviation necessary here is relatively low. Does the board have any comments?
I heard reference to a landscaping variance.
Our percentage of coverage, we think we're gonna meet, and obviously, whatever we do, we're gonna have to meet the landscaping coverage. But there's almost all of the pavers, are all the pavers coming out?
Yeah.
100% of the pavers are coming out. So we think that if the pool were in at that same size, the calculations are within a percentage or two, but it will comply. We're not looking for the landscape variance now.
Plan says it'll be 33% with the pavers being removed.
There's more, I'm sorry, Jeff, you're taking out.
Yeah, that's what we're being removed, yeah.
Okay.
Does 33% comply?
I calculated the front steps and it's still, you're still shy by about 1%.
We thought we were right there with all the pavers coming out, but whatever we have to do to comply, we'll comply. Landscaping, we'll make sure is the right number. It's, you know, understanding,
Do you have room to comply?
what, yes.
Okay.
Understanding that, and Mr. Palmisano's point is correct, you know, you have to reach in, but I guess the point, if someone is in trouble in the pool, you can jump in and grab them just as easily as
Unless you can't swim.
running around. Well, that's correct. We live on an island.
Yeah, with the pool, I guess the water itself is from water's edge to water's edge, I think is maybe 9 foot. And the pool is look what I'm looking at is a fiberglass one piece, so it has a pretty large step. And again, when you go with a smaller pool, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for kids, especially young kids that jump.
So the pool is gradient where on each side it's low and
I
it
think
goes
from,
deeper in
like,
the middle?
3 to 5 or something.
Okay.
Anything else?
Unless the board has any further questions or wants to discuss.
Done talking?
And my big thing, I guess the one thing I could say is, and as a real estate agent, I go around, I see a lot of these backyards with pools, and they're so tight, you know? And I just feel like 6 foot is just tight. I mean, I know that's what the code is, but I don't want the whole house, the whole backyard to be taken up by a pool. I think that's kind of crazy. I think it's safer to have more space on 3 sides than 4. And
Well, we had a 10-foot setback, and then because of, I guess because our neighboring towns also cut it back, but we cut it back to accommodate everybody to make it 6 foot. So it's,
And as Jeff said, on every side but the one closest to the house, there will be 5 feet, 8 feet, and 7 feet. So 3 sides of the pool, there's room on each side, in and out to get access. And with the door, emergency personnel can get into the house. It doesn't block anything in that regard. So we're really talking about one side being 1 foot from the house. It sounds like it's a little bit objectionable.
So you're non-compliant on 2 sides, correct?
Non-compliant on 2 sides, but one is, remember, 5 feet from the house, 2 feet from the air conditioning platform.
Right.
There's certainly enough room there. It's only
well,
one-
it was never a fire hazard or anything. It was to get around it, so it's still 2 feet that you can walk in, correct?
Correct, or you could
Right.
go under the air conditioning platform and you have 5 feet there. Because the air conditioner over there is about 6 feet in the air.
Well, there's nothing under the air
No.
conditioner?
Oh, no, it's wide open there.
Any vertical structure?
Is that a vertical structure if it doesn't touch the ground?
That's Mr. Patterson, that's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier. The air conditioning platform is just up on posts. There's nothing underneath. But it is the closest vertical structure to the pool, and your ordinance talks to that as the distance between water's edge and, it's not water's edge and house, it's water's edge and vertical structure. So on that side, you've got 5 feet and you've got a post in the middle. So 3 on one side, you can go under. The other side, you've got 2. There's plenty of room there. It just seems like the issue is the foot between the pool and the house on the side yard.
With that,
Mr. Silva, being the reasonable person he is, kind of reading the board and understanding, said, taking Mr. Palmisano's comment into consideration, move the pool on that side over 1 foot. So now it would be 2 feet from the side of the house lengthwise, and then 5 from the back of the house, 2 from the air conditioning platform. We would amend our application and request a vote there on 2 feet on both sides.
what
I know you didn't say 2 feet, but 2 feet there is this, there's plenty of room to get through. If there's a child or someone is in need, I mean,
I understand what you're saying, and we made the decision that you need 3 feet. But what, I now have a better understanding of this end that I was confused about. If there's 6 foot of open space there that's 5 feet, it technically doesn't meet the rules. But that's what we're here for, is to give variances in a situation like that. In my mind, not the board, in my mind, I don't have a problem with that if there's 6 foot of height of 5 foot open space.
and there is.
I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with not having 3 feet on the other side of the fence, and I know the board does, so. As opposed to having, moving the pool out to 6 feet from this fence and 6 feet from this fence, I would not have a problem with it still being 7 feet from this fence down here, because you do really have 5 feet here. I can see a need for a variance there. Unless other people on the board have a problem with that. I don't know.
I'm not following you. Are you,
The
if
part,
they have 1 foot in there?
no, forget the
against
one,
house.
forget the one.
Okay.
We're talking about the 2 feet at this end?
Oh, yeah.
There's really 5 feet, because
Right,
the
yeah.
barrier is 6 feet in the air, so there's 5 feet for people to get in there.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that variance. It's a
neither do I.
technicality because that vertical structure is there. That's a technicality I didn't realize existed. I have no problem with that.
Right.
But I think what you have or anyone has is we decided we want 3 feet around the pool, not 2 feet, not
Right.
1 feet.
So I'm sorry, Mr.
Just-
Patterson.
This is, this whole thing is gonna be over. He's telling me the air conditioner's at ground level?
No, no,
It's off, it's up off.
no, it's,
Up in the air.
It's sitting on this platform.
That's the generator.
That's the generator.
That's the generator.
Generator's getting moved.
It's gonna get moved.
It's a whole house generator.
Yeah, there'll be, complete length of the pool, there'll be 5 foot of clearance there, other than from 6 feet in the air up.
correct. But that is 2 feet from the closest vertical member, which is the platform post of the air conditioner platform.
And how big is that post? 4 by 4, 6 by 6?
4 by 4.
Yeah, that's,
So you have to go to the pool side of the post, which makes it 2 feet.
That's right.
right. You have anything else?
Well, right, yes, I'm a little confused myself now, because the pool would be 2 feet from that post, correct? But you want to maintain 3 feet on the house side? Or are you saying to move the pool closer to that?
I'm saying, I misunderstood. I thought at ground level you had 2 feet. You don't. You have 5 feet at
Correct.
ground level. From 6 feet up,
Yes,
that's where the problem is, and I'm saying that's a hardship. That really, our point was safety. You have 5 feet there really, except for a 4 by 4 post. I don't see any problem with that. I don't think that's unsafe.
okay.
So I have no problem with, and again, I'm speaking for me. I have no problem with only having 2 feet there. In my mind, it really is 5 feet.
The issue is the length of the pool along the side of
The issue was the 1 foot on the other side of the house, on the other side of the pool.
Well, as he said, he would amend the application to request 2 feet on that side.
Okay?
That would be enough room to certainly walk through. It's not that big of a pool where someone couldn't grab someone out. If there was someone in that one spot, which was completely equidistant from both sides and across the pool, they'd still be able to run over and pick up, you know. So
That gives me 7 and 7.
we'd formally amend the application to request 2 feet along the length of the house, the long way of the pool, and leave it at 2 feet from the nearest vertical member from the rear of the house. And the board sees fit to grant the pool equipment, the generator, everything will be in the setbacks and will comply with the landscaping. So conditionally, we're okay with whatever conditions Mr. McLaren and Mr. Galantino need to see for zoning or construction.
That crawl space wall, that's a block, concrete block?
It is, yeah.
So you have a footing below that?
Yeah, it was when Carmen lifted it after Sandy.
So the footing sticks out quite a bit too then, right?
Good point.
There's a footing there, right?
No more comments from the board, are you ready?
You ready?
Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment? Public portion is closed.
All right, we need a motion for C variance relief to permit a distance of 2 feet from the water's edge of the pool to the air conditioning platform, and a variance to permit, or 3 feet is required, and a variance to permit 2 feet from the water's edge to the Thurlow side of the house, where 3 feet is required. The conditions will be the applicant will install the door into the garage as you represented on the record during the course of the hearing, and the applicant will comply with all the representations made during the course of the hearing.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Tom Collins?
Awful lot of case for a small little pool. Sometimes I think we get misguided up here because we are constantly trying to legislate basically personal safety when we cannot do that on the case. So what a homeowner does and his liability on his property really shouldn't be our consideration. Public safety, on the other hand, is a major concern. So having egress around the pool for the firemen, the policemen, for you to get out, for things like that, for the kids, that's more of what we're supposed to do. I had no problem with the original design, moving it out 2 feet. It's not gonna change much. The pool's only 10 foot wide. I have a pool 5 foot deep. Somebody's drowning. You're in that pool, you're grabbing them out. Running around to the other side is crazy. I think for putting it in, for what you're doing, that I don't see any really negative impacts to the neighborhood. I don't see any detriments. It's going to be a positive for you. It's going to increase the value of property in Margate and enhance the neighborhood, so I vote in favor.
Thank you.
Clem Osowski?
Three-foot clearance on all around the pool we came up with for safety reasons. And this is exactly the condition we were trying to correct, because, as Eric said, it does occur many places around town. But what everything does here, it boils down to some seating convenience versus safety. That simply makes no sense to me. After much deliberation, we came up with 3 feet as the minimum. I see no reason, no practical reason, why this pool can't be moved 2 feet and allow that 3-foot clearance, so I vote no on the application.
Rich Patterson?
Well, this hasn't happened before, but I have to disagree with Mr. Collins that we have no business legislating the safety. That we came up with this rule. This board decided that rule for the reasons that Mr. Goldstein stated and the problems that we had been having. To eliminate those problems, we talked back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and came up with 3 feet. And this is the first case since that time. I see no problem, like I said before, I see no problem. I think it's a hardship for this end of the pool. I wouldn't even mind seeing the pool moved another foot this way, but as far as being a house on that side, we came up with a decision of 3 feet, and I see no reason here, no hardship that you can't. I don't think it's dangerous with a 6-foot or 7-foot area over there for the kids to run around. I just don't see that as being dangerous. Skinny pools are, you've seen my pool, it's 11 feet, and the kids jump in and they could hit on the other side. We can't jump, so you can't go much less than 10 feet because you can't stop the kids from jumping or standing on a raft in the middle of the pool and fall off the raft and hit on the side. But I think you have to sacrifice that foot on that seating side. So I vote no on the application.
Jim Galantino?
Tough call. I can hear both sides of the story. More egress around the pool, and it is tucked up close to the property, and I don't think there is any piling in there. I think it's just a spread footing.
That's even wider.
No piling, spread footing. It's a no piling, spread footing.
That's a structural issue.
It's a tight little backyard. I really didn't know there was that much room back there for a pool. I just wish it would have been moved over another foot. Shame you can't come down with a smaller size pool. I have to vote no.
Craig Palmisano?
Too tight to the house. That's my bottom line. Safety issue here. We made the rule 3 foot around the pool for a reason, and I'm sticking with it. I vote no.
Remy Pelosi?
I agree with what Mr. Galantino said. I have to vote no.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, we just enacted this rule. It's not a hardship. You can either take a foot off the pool or move the pool over another foot. So I'm gonna vote no.
Application does not pass. 1 yes, 6 noes.
Just ask for a note of clarification, however. Obviously, there are two sides to the pool. You voted no in the entirety. We do have an issue relating to the part of the pool, as Mr. Patterson pointed out, that creates the technical aspect of the variance being closer to the air conditioning platform. So is that something that the board would consider, Mr. Manos, a vote only on that side based upon a no vote of the pool being close to the house on the length? So that would retain 3 feet, but it would still be 2 feet from the rear of the house.
That was already taken.
Right, I mean, look, a vote was already taken. I'll leave it up to the board's discretion if they want to re-vote on.
Only on
one
that side. Correct.
Aspect. The alternative is we can say no, and he'd have to come back and do it next month.
Do we have that ability?
The board can reconsider, I'll let Mr.
I'm
Manos speak
asking
to
my
that.
attorney.
Yeah, and this, I don't want to open up the can of worms to
I
a
don't either.
situation where, someone gets denied, oh, let's re-vote, we'll move it back, we'll move it back, we'll move it back. That, we're not doing that. However.
I was wrong,
in a
I should have asked for a
situ-
split vote. It's on me.
In a situation like this, the board has some discretion. They want to reconsider it and do a re-vote as opposed to making the applicant, refile and come back next month or whenever
If we have
on
to-
that one variance.
If we have discretion to do that, I'd like to do that unless the board has an objection to that.
Is everyone okay?
Thank
with
you.
So we'll take a vote on that one side.
Okay, so it's just the same conditions I stated, but this is just a variance between the pool's edge and the air conditioning units, where they're requesting 2 feet, where technically 3 feet is required. So that means we'll have to comply on the other side.
I think you have to justify your vote.
No. Go ahead, Joe.
It's always good to state your
Right.
reasons as best as possible.
May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Tom Collins?
I vote yes for all the same reasons I did the first time.
Clem Wazeski?
Considering that the only situation is a 2-foot clearance at the couple of posts supporting the air conditioner, I still think there'd be adequate space for safety considerations. So I'll vote yes on that.
Rich Patterson?
I look at this as a hardship. It's a technicality that he's not within 5 feet, so I vote yes on this.
Jim Galantino?
I concur with Rich Patterson. I just vote yes.
Craig Palmisano?
Yeah, I agree with the other board members. I vote yes.
Remy Pelosi?
Also yes, same reasons.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I see that as a hardship, and I'm gonna vote yes.
Application for the pool on one side passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case is Russell Kane, 301 North.
Rich?
I'm sorry. Oh, for the record, Mrs. Gubernaldi is here. Next case is Russell Kane, 301 North Thurlow Avenue, Block 520, Lot 51.01, in the S40 district to grant C variances for side yard setback, combined side yard setback, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Board Chairman and Board members. Our report is based on the application of Russell Kane, 301 North Thurlow Avenue, Block 520, Lot 5101. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a deck addition to an existing single-family dwelling that has partial views of Sunset Canal within the S40 zoning district. Several variances are required to construct the deck expansion as proposed, and they are listed below. Page 1 and 2 is the zoning chart analysis. Documents reviewed. The variances requested and required are as follows. Side yard setback for the deck, whereas the required setback is 10 feet, 3.1 feet exists, and 3.1 feet is proposed, which is an expansion of a non-conforming setback. The second variance is a combined side yard setback for the deck, whereas the required combined side yard setback is 22 feet, 10.3 feet exists, and 9.8 feet is proposed. Again, this is due to an expansion of a non-conforming setback. My comments are as follows. The side yard setbacks to deck are due in large part to existing non-conforming setback for both side yard and, as a result, combined side yard setbacks. Landscape coverage is still meeting the required minimum. The site has partial views and possible usage of the Sunset Canal Lagoon. The property is a corner lot and is subject to having 2 front yards and 2 side yards, which affects the setbacks. No other variances or waivers are being requested. Both the C1 and C2 criteria are needed to be satisfied in this application. That concludes my report for this application.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren, Mr. Patterson, members of the board. My name is Chris Balance, and I represent Rusty and Ricky Kane, who are the owners of 301 North Thurlow Avenue, Block 520, Lot 51.01, located in the S40 zone, property in the corner of Amherst and Thurlow. It's an existing single-family home. The Kanes are requesting an expansion of their existing deck, which is between their house and the house along Amherst, going in the easterly direction. If you look at the plan, it's really the most logical place to have put a deck on the property. Unfortunately, we're stuck with 2 front yard setbacks, and then we have 2 side yards, each being a requirement of 10 due to the frontage of the property. And we're kind of constrained in terms of the availability we have in the side yards, resulting in 2 side yard setback variances. The setback variance along Amherst is to meet the existing deck depth at 3.1 from the property line. The side yard setback variance on the side street on Thurlow is simply a function of bringing the stairs down on the side of the house rather than have those cut into the deck. What's important to look at in the case is the setbacks on this property are really where you need them. You've got a 15-foot front yard setback and a 20-foot front yard setback. So in terms of creating the necessity for setbacks, they're really found in the front yards rather than in the side yards on this property. I think you'll find the plan's well thought out. Peter did a nice job in putting some usable deck space right there in the corner where you'll actually be able to see the lagoon. Enough of my talking. Let Peter walk you through the plan real quick, and I'll let you get to these guys. Pete?
State your name for the record, I'll swear you in.
Peter Weiss?
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Peter, you prepared the plan that's been submitted to the board for their consideration for the Canes?
Yes.
Would you kindly explain to them what it is you've done?
Okay. Well, let me talk a little bit about the site. As Chris mentioned, it's a corner lot. The house, when it was developed, was pushed basically into the back left corner, back towards the bay. So we're right in the corner of the canal there. And even though we're only about from here to the table from the water, we don't actually have any waterfront. So currently there's and another thing I wanted to mention, when the house was developed, because of the positioning on the corner, the garage ended up basically in the primary corner. So there's no real living space that takes advantage of the views of the canal. So that's kind of eaten up with the garage. So to my thinking, it makes sense to create a little bit of outdoor space in that corner so you can see the canal. So that's what we plan to do. There's an existing deck in the side yard on the east side, about 6 feet wide, about 14 feet long, but it's only accessible from a den. So it's difficult to eat out there because it's too small. It's only about 5.5 foot of clearance between the house and the railing. And if you're going from the kitchen, you have to go back through the hallway, through the den to get to the deck. So it's a little cumbersome to do that. So what we propose to do is extend the existing deck back to the north, in line with the existing deck, far enough back that we can get a stairway down into the driveway, and then also have a small connector, narrow deck, coming off right by the kitchen here. We're going to take out a window, put a door in, and just have a little connector to get back to the deck to serve food.
Peter, the purpose for that connector really is to take advantage of that door that they're going to put in the living room, to actually use the outside space from the kitchen, bring food out, bring drinks out and whatnot, as opposed to having to go back through the office next door, so to
Yes,
speak.
yes.
And the variance for the, I'll call the east side, is 3.1 where 10 is required,
Correct,
and that's an existing setback.
correct,
And on the north side, it's 6.7, again, where 10 is required,
correct,
and that's just to get the stair in there up against the house.
yes.
You see that deck, should the board approve it, causing any substantial detriment to the neighbors or the public?
No,
Do you see it as denigrating the zone plan or the zoning ordinance in any way?
not at all, no.
Board members, the Canes have spoken to Philadelphia Soft Pretzel Dan next door, who has no problem with the proposal. He would be the homeowner who would be most affected by the deck between the houses, and on Amherst. Yes. I understand the guy's here once a year, and Rusty tells me he has no problem with what's proposed. But I did have a letter from the guy, Dan, next door on Amherst. He said he has no concern with it whatsoever. I can't introduce that as evidence, but I can tell you that I have it in my file. And they're the only two variances, and I have nothing else to present. The Canes are here, should you have any questions. I tried to do this fast. Sorry.
I think this is the type of case that we're here for. Variances that it makes no sense not to have a deck there. It doesn't interfere with anybody. They can take advantage of the views. It's not somebody coming here, I want something, I want it, I don't care what the rules are. This is one where the rules don't fit this situation.
Nothing about lounge chairs.
If they had a different attorney, it probably wouldn't help, but I think with the attorney they have now, I think they have a really good chance of getting this through.
Chris, I got
Any
one
other
question.
questions from the board or
I
any
do.
comments?
Where are you putting the air conditioner?
Sliding toward, you know what, before I say that, let's let Peter answer the question.
Okay. We're going to shift it towards Amherst Avenue.
Stays on the
As you can
side,
see.
stays on the side of the house, goes toward Amherst.
Got to kick forward
Yeah,
maybe
but I
5
thought
or
you
6
were
feet.
going to, it says it's going to be relocated.
Any shrubbery in front of that?
Well, there's actually a tree, which I show on the site plan, which basically blocks the view of the existing deck anyway, but that would certainly obscure the conductor.
From Amherst?
If you look at the photographs that I took, you'll see that that tree pretty much blocks that whole corridor.
Yeah, I
There's
looked
shrubbery
down.
on the plans here. It shows it being blocked.
Right, correct. This is existing, right, all this stuff.
Yes, sir.
What are the relative heights of the decks of both the adjacent houses as proposed to the new deck for your client?
The deck,
First elevations.
Clem, I didn't measure the neighbor's deck, but I'm gonna say it's consistent with what's proposed. Only because the houses were built around the same time, and the elevation, the first floor elevation is about the same.
The neighbor on Amherst Avenue's deck is at bulkhead level, it's lower. The neighbor on Thurlow Avenue was a deck about the same height, but
Our deck
it
is-
doesn't seem to interfere.
Our deck is about 4 feet above grade. On the Amherst side, there's a lower deck that's down around the bulkhead, but then there's an upper section, which is actually probably higher than our deck. On the house to the north, that deck's probably a couple feet above grade.
And the decks on those two houses appear to be closer to each other than you're going to be to them.
Correct, the way the corner is situated.
That's all. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Anyone here from the public like to comment on this case? Public portion is closed. If there's no other comments from the board, Leo, would you read a motion?
Sure. And Chris, you're okay with everything in Mr. McLaren's report?
I am, and just one vote will be satisfactory.
We need a motion for C variance relief for a side yard setback to the deck of 3.1 feet where 10 feet is required, and a combined side yard setback of 9.8 feet where 22 feet is required, and the conditions will be anything contained in Mr. McLaren's report dated February 21st, 2018, to the extent not modified tonight.
I'll make a motion.
Tom Collins?
I vote in favor of the application. I think what Mr. Patterson said during his comments was very apropos. The fact that you're on a corner creates a hardship because you have two fronts, two sides. It's just crazy. And everything else is de minimis, and I really don't think it's going to have any negative impacts to the neighborhood, so I vote.
Clem Osleski?
This is not a complicated application at all. The way these new decks are tucked into that inside corner, which corner has a very strange relationship to the water of the lagoon. I think there's no interference with the neighbor, detriment to any public good. I vote in favor.
Rich Patterson?
As I previously stated, this is tremendous benefit to the homeowner with no detriment to any neighbors. I see no reason not to do this, and as I said, I don't know why it wasn't done when the house was built. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
To the side yard and combined yard setback, I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I agree with the other board members. There is no detriment to the neighbors or to the public. The homeowner can now take advantage of views, and I vote in favor of the application.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with the fellow board members. I vote yes for this. There are no neighbors that were here to protest, and it's a good little deck for you.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I think that the corner property creates a hardship, and I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you all very much.
Next case,
All done.
we're going to take a 5-minute break before the next case.
Good call.
All right.
Next case is Harbor Bay LLC, 9317 Amherst Avenue, Block 527. Sit down, Clem. Lots 1, 1.01, 1.02, 1.03, 1.04 in the WSD and R to grant site plan D for use and C variances for side yard, combined side yard, landscape, and fence height parking, and possibly others. Whew. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Board Chairman. As you are aware, this is a site plan, so there are two reports. There will be my zoning report, and then there's an engineer's report in regard to the site plan. So I will be deferring to the engineer's report several times in my report, as the applicant is aware. So my report is based on the application of Harbor Bay LLC, 9317 Amherst Avenue. The current zone is WSD, which is the Waterfront Special District. Portions of it used to be within the former riparian zone, which the governing body has since corrected. So the following variances are needed for the substantial benefit variance and the hardship variances. A use variance is no longer needed because it's contained entirely within the WSD district now. So the background of this application is a little lengthy, just to explain to the board, which they are familiar with. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new marina with a restaurant with office space above in a zone which previously straddled the WSD and R zoning districts. Previously, the zoning boundary line was further into the water, and the zoning district, now known as WSD or Waterfront Special District, contained this property and use along with the other similar uses that are adjacent to this site, circa to the zoning map 2004. Prior to that, the site was completely contained within the adjacent same zoning district around 1988 and later. The planning board and the governing body, recognizing that these properties were inadvertently rezoned to make the existing uses non-conforming, reviewed and made a recommendation to correct the zoning boundary line to include these properties, which would return them to conforming uses. This project hastened the zoning correction, so now a use variance D is no longer required since the uses are now permitted within the WSD district. Every permitted use within the R zone is a permitted use within the WSD zone. The project is required to comply with FEMA requirements so that the prevailing height is dictated by the most restrictive or conservative height. The ABFE map, which the city still uses, indicates that the site is within a Zone V zone and a minimum elevation of 12 feet with 2 feet of freeboard to the lowest horizontal structural member, which would be elevation 14. The floor would typically be set about 1 or 2 feet above that, which would start where the building is measured from in regard to building height. The only requirement for the elevation is the lowest horizontal member. This would be the case whether the project is within the WSD zone or in the former riparian zone. Even though the upland portion as per the preliminary firm indicates an AE zone elevation 9, the V zone elevation 12 prevails. The proposed improvements are also for a new bulkhead, although not part of this application. The proposed bulkhead height is required to be set at elevation 9 NAVD 88, which is about 4 feet higher than the existing bulkhead there today. The project also entails a boardwalk promenade, which was incorporated into the master plan under the city's Phase 1 Sustainability Plan, post-Sandy report. This plan will also help link the beach and bay as part of the pedestrian corridor along Washington Avenue to the Amherst Avenue bayfront. The bayfront area is viewed as another commercial district which has seasonal events each year to help boost the area. As part of any development being considered along Amherst Avenue corridor, CAFR and waterfront development approvals and requirements have to be met, and permits have to be received. Development of any property which is currently not developed is highly, if not certainly, not likely to occur. Page 2.
Would you expand on that for 1 minute and repeat what you told me that CAFR does not allow? What would be allowed if someone wanted to build on that property later? It has to be 25 feet.
For starters, most of the land on that Amherst Avenue is either city right-of-way or city-owned property. If there's privately owned property, it's too small to develop. It doesn't meet
How
the
far from the
requirements.
bulkhead would development have to be for CAFR rules?
For CAFR to permit a structure to be built, they have to be 25 feet back from the bulkhead.
Which would be in the middle of the street?
Correct.
So basically, nothing can be developed if there's nothing there now?
Correct. And also, there's the first use type of situation where if there's not an existing building there now, you probably won't get a new building there.
Thank you.
Sure. Going back to the page 3 at the bottom, a small portion of the public right-of-way is requested to be a lease area and is required to be granted by the governing body. The governing body has submitted a letter to the applicant agreeing that a lease agreement or possible vacation will be considered as part of his application. So that will not hinder the parking shown on the plans. Section 2 shows the documents reviewed. There's a whole litany of plans and CAFR permits reviewed. Several variances are required. Section 3, I will identify the variances that are required. Front yard setback, whereas a minimum setback required is 10 feet, 25.7 feet exists and 0 feet is proposed. Front yard setback for the building, whereas the minimum setback is 10 feet and 0.8 feet is proposed. Side yard setback for the minimum left, whereas the minimum setback is 8 feet, 27.9 feet exists and 3.5 feet is proposed. Side yard setback minimum on the right, whereas the minimum setback is 8 feet, 2.8 feet exists and 2.5 feet is proposed. Side yard setback for the minimum for the deck on the left-hand side, if I'm standing on the street looking at it, whereas the minimum setback is 8 feet, same as the side yard for the building, and 3.5 feet is proposed. Combined side yard setback, whereas the minimum setback is 20 feet, 30.8 feet exists, and 6 feet is proposed. Parking spaces, whereas 60 spaces are required based on restaurant, office, marina, and retail uses, and 4 spaces are required. The next 5 variances are in regard to the signs. The first variance for the sign is for the style, whereas the only wall signs or fascia signs are permitted and a roof-mounted sign is proposed. I also indicate the sections of the ordinance that I referred to. The next, number 9, sign, number facing a street, whereas only one sign may face the street and two are proposed. Next one, sign, maximum size facing a parking, whereas the maximum size is 12 feet, and basically I did the reverse side of the building facing the dockage. I took that as a parking area, but it makes reference to the rear of the building. Using boat docks as parking, and 62.91 feet is proposed, where 12 feet is required as a maximum. Maximum number facing the parking, whereas the maximum number is 1 and 2 are proposed. Again, it's not clearly in the ordinance, but it says a sign, so I take that as one sign. Sign distance from the side of the building, whereas the minimum distance to a side of the building is 10% of the linear frontage in feet, or based on my rough calculations of 90 feet. Each sign cannot be closer than 9 feet to the corner. And signs number 2, 3, and 4 are proposed to be less than 9 feet to a side of the building. Section 4, my comments. Yes.
Item 7, parking spaces. You said 4 spaces are required. You mean
They're provided, yes.
they're proposed?
Proposed. Or they will be provided, yes. Comment number A, 15 checklist items according to the city engineer's letter have not been submitted and will be required to be addressed prior to testimony or during testimony. The general review portion of the engineer's letter lists 16 items that will also be required to be addressed by the applicant tonight. The front yard setback is proposed to be 0 feet and 10 feet is required. The proposed distance of 0 is similar to Lamberti's further down the street. The minimum side yard setbacks are not being met and require variances for both side yards as well as for combined side yards. A side yard setback to the deck is required as it does not meet the minimum. The parking requirements are not being met, which is not unusual for Margate businesses. However, there is a deficit of 56 spaces, which will require adequate testimony. The multiple uses include marina have never been met, the required number of spaces. There is an additional variance I didn't list on here. Fence height is proposed to be 8 feet in height, and whereas 4 feet is proposed, or 4 feet, it's 75% openings is required, and 8 feet is proposed. The bulkhead height and bottom of the floor requirements is out of scale to a 4-foot high fence, hence that's probably why they selected the 8-foot high fence. There are several variances required for signage, again due to the unusual site parameters and location offer a difficult interpretation of the signs. There are 4 signs proposed, 2 along Amherst Avenue and 2 along the rear yard, which faces inside thoroughfare. The 2 signs along Amherst Avenue require variances for a number of signs. The number of signs facing the water needs a variance for number proposed. 3 of the 4 signs require variances for proximity to the side of the building or corner. The large sign facing the water requires a variance for size and also being roof mounted, which is not permitted in any zone. The building height map indicates that the maximum elevation of a building shall be 28 feet. The zoning chart for WSD district indicates allowable building height to be 30 feet from the first floor. Since the property is commercial, the building height is interpreted to be 30 feet from the finished floor, which on the plans is elevation 16, which is required by FEMA. Item number J, the hours of operation for all operations of the project need to be indicated and identified on the plans. Indicate what public access requirements exist and will be maintained. Exterior lighting for the building is not shown. Again, that's in the site plan review that the engineer provided also. I just wanted to reiterate that. All plans, approvals, conditions, and reviews are subject to CAFR and waterfront development permits as well as U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits. The master plan encourages development of the Amherst Avenue waterfront. The zoning ordinance makes a distinction that marina facilities are to be isolated along Amherst Avenue between Coolidge Avenue and Decatur Avenue. The master plan also encourages the pedestrian link from the beach to the bay along the to-be-designated pedestrian corridor of Washington Avenue. The boardwalk promenade requirements are being met by the applicant. The bulkhead height as part of this application or part of the project will also be met at elevation 9. The applicant shall provide testimony as to how the construction and protection of the existing underground fuel tanks will be accomplished. I suggest that a safety plan be in place if a tank is ruptured. Section V, discuss recommendations of complying with the variances, and that will be under the testimony of the applicant. I do have another item in here, I just want to... Item number H on my recommendations is the boardwalk promenade should be deeded as a public access easement, so to maintain public access at all times and not be shut out. That is the intent of the master plan. That concludes my report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. McLarnon. Good evening, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benjamin Zeltner of the firm Levin Star of Atlantic City, representing the applicant Harbor Bay. First off, I want to say I'm glad to be back here where my father was a longtime board member sitting up there with you. First, I'd like to introduce our development team, who's going to be providing testimony about this project. First, Arthur Ponzio of Arthur Ponzio Associates, Jonathan Barnhart, Mark Petrella, Sean Gormley, who's manager of Harbor Bay, and Mark Alger, our builder. And they are part of the team that's going to take this site and make it into an exciting multi-million-dollar development, which is going to completely upgrade a downtrodden site at what I call the epicenter of Margate's bayfront. The property is the former Captain Andy's Marina, also known as the Margate Fishing Pier at Captain Andy's Marina, which included the teal charter boat and outside deck for dining and parties. Some of you remember the improvements have been here since circa 1960. I can recall fishing off the pier when I was a young boy. Over time, unfortunately, the improvements have deteriorated. It's now an aging relic of a bygone era, sorely in need of redevelopment. It's totally out of character with the developments along Amherst Avenue, and in contrast to the intent of the Waterfront Special District. I'm not going to go into the details of the development. Mr. McLarnon went over them. Our experts are here. Unless the board has any questions of me, I'm going to call Art Ponzio as my first witness.
Would you like to swear everyone in at the same time, please?
Absolutely.
And what we'll do, what I think we should do is allow the applicant to present his case, and then during the public, if there's any other attorneys here, you can present your own witnesses, you can cross-examine witnesses, and then members of the public will have a chance to speak as well. Generally speaking, if circumstances dictate otherwise, we'll deal with it.
I just want to confirm one thing, you are seeking preliminary and final site plan.
That's correct, yes. Along with the variances, yes.
So if you had anyone you want to testify, come forward and be sworn in.
Mr. Zeller, these are all witnesses that you're going to call, or are they just going to, okay.
Correct.
All right, let's go down the line. Start with Mr. Ponzio. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Dr. W. Ponzio, 400 North Clover Avenue, president of Dr. Ponzio Company and Associates.
Okay, and Miss Levin, or Judy
Levin, 306 North Essex Avenue, Margate.
There's a microphone. Would you hand that from person to person?
Sure.
Ken Catuno, 4 North Martindale Avenue, Ventnor, New Jersey.
Hello, Joe Swift, 65 Seaside Court, Margate, New Jersey.
John Barnhart, office address 400 North Dover Avenue, licensed professional engineer, licensed professional planner.
Mark Petrella, principal with SOSH Architects, Atlantic City.
Dave Shropshire, Shropshire Associates, professional engineer, professional planner, traffic engineering, 5600 Asbury Avenue, Ocean City, New Jersey.
If you can each raise your right hand, each swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Everybody said yes.
With the board's permission, I know Mr. Ponzio has been here on numerous occasions. We'd ask the board to accept Mr. Ponzio's credentials as an expert licensed surveyor and planner in New Jersey, familiar with Margate zoning and development ordinance.
We accept his credentials.
Thank you very much. Good. Okay. Mr. Ponzio, are you familiar with the application, the plans, the subject property, and the surrounding area?
Yes, I am.
Please describe the site, the history, and the zoning.
Okay. This exhibit is A2, series of 4 photographs taken the other day showing the existing conditions at the property. That is the building on the property in the upper left from Amherst Avenue, the front of Captain Andy's building, as you see it there, in pretty poor condition. Again, this upper right, a photograph of the fuel tank area. That was the diesel tank that was built some years ago. We did years ago for Mr. Stork. Two other photographs of the site, that is, showing the side of the building in the lower right-hand corner. The overall intent of this exhibit is to show the deteriorated condition of the building. It's been closed for a few years. It got hammered pretty hard and sandy. It was open a very short period of time after that. But since that time, the building's been closed down. It certainly is a blighted condition. And without a doubt, in my opinion, a poster child for a redevelopment plan. And go to the next exhibit here. A couple more photographs. Give you the flavor of the entire site. If you will. Bear with me.
If you remember, Mr. Ponzio, just make reference to it, and we'll call it A, whatever. You just,
Thank you.
We've pre-marked the exhibit.
Okay, good.
Appreciate that. Thank you. This is a 3 drone shot. That's like a drone shot taken yesterday of the property, taken from the water, facing the building. You can see Amherst Avenue in the background. This is the rear part of the building. You again see the condition of the building, condition of the pier, as you see it, in not usable condition, of course. To the left side of that, you see the adjoining development. To the right side, the old Integrity Marine Angler's Roost, going back a few years, and the Angler's Roost Marina Pier. Juniors. Next to that, the restaurant, Lord Goldberg's old building adjacent to that. Here's a second drone shot, a 4 taken from the front side of the building, trying to give you a good picture of the entire site. Again, depicted in this are the adjoining properties. You can see how they're placed along the site, and with the Captain Andy's building more or less in the center of the photograph. Let's see if you want to show another one. This is important. I'll come back to this again in a moment. Again, an aerial view taken yesterday morning. This site, this photograph is on an angle. We wanted to show the entirety of Amherst Avenue. A pretty good shot, as you can see it there, facing, well, let's call it almost due west. Captain Andy's in the foreground. Amherst Avenue, public parking for the most part, all the way along the street frontage. In the background, difficult to see from your distance, is the Lamberti's restaurant that you can see in the photograph. I'll come back to. I didn't say that. Did I say A5 on that one?
No.
Okay.
A5.
This is a very interesting to all of us, I'm sure, photo. We believe this is sometime early 70s. Mr. Gormley found this, and the quality of it was remarkable. We were able to scan that after it was emailed a couple times and blow it up for tonight's presentation, and the clarity is pretty nice, as you can see. There is more or less somewhat in the heyday, if you will, of Captain Andy's. Captain Andy's, the building right in that location. Look how nicely appointed it is at that point in time. The residence, Ralph Stork's residence on the upper level, his deck out back. The store down below, you can see, and the entire marina out to the old gas dock, which is long since gone. All the rental boats, 20 of them, lined up on the easterly side of the pier. On the westerly side of the pier, the rental boats, a couple transient slips here for the gasoline service. And we counted about 60 people standing on that dock. Business was wonderful in those days for this type of operation. Interesting, look at the vintage of the cars and whatnot in the photograph. And if you notice, all the parking all along Amherst, even back in those days, it was gravel with a guardrail guarding the cars from going over the bulkhead. But you can still see it was used pretty heavily all the way back in those days. It's kind of nice looking at the nostalgia of the property.
What number is that, Mr.?
I'm sorry, that was A1.
Thanks.
I want to go to, quickly, a survey of the property. I can just refer to that briefly. This is just a plan view. A6 is a property survey. Amherst Avenue at the bottom of the sheet. You can see the building and the deck that exists adjacent to the westerly side of the building, and the remnants that exist of the pier. The bold lines are the riparian area, we've spoken about a couple times before during Mr. McLaren's presentation earlier. You can see the extent of the ownership of Mr. Gormley on the property. That is the bold line showing the perimeter all the way around.
Mr. Ponzio,
Yes,
is
sir.
that deck between the buildings, is the entire deck part of this project? Or
Yes,
is the
it
deck?
is.
It is,
Yes,
all
it
the
is.
way to the next building?
All the way to the next
Thank
building.
you.
Correct, thank you.
Mr. Ponzio, that was what I referred to in my opening. That was the teal charter boat deck where they used to offload and have events there.
And most recently, yes, before that, the deck that supported there was a headboat, about a 60-passenger headboat, as well as a pontoon boat that was located in the old fishing fund. I'm sure most of us all remember, a few fishermen in the room. This is A8. Now, A8 is an excerpt, that is a portion of the property. The marina is not shown on this exhibit because it's blown up for presentation purposes. This is the proposed site plan, if you will. The shaded area is the proposed building. I'll go around the perimeter. That is the proposed building. It's a bulkhead line right at that location. I have my hand. The building over the water will match identically. When I say identically, I mean exactly to the amount of building that's over the water today. Mr. McLaren made a statement, correctly stated, about the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Buildings over water, I'm going to say 99% of the time, there are very few exceptions, are not permitted today. So if you have a building that exists over water and it is either approved by a prior permit or grandfathered by the fact that it's been there in this location since 1977, then you will get a permit from the DEP to rebuild that, what they call in kind, meaning in the same location. You can elevate it if you have to for FEMA or whatever. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we made an application to the DEP. They did give us the right to replace that building, to replace that marina, replace the deck along the side. We have that in our pocket. We're now back at the CRDA seeking a CAFRA and a waterfront development permit, which again I'll talk about a little bit more for the remainder of the project. Also included is an expansion of the building on the land side. You can see it here on the property, on the exhibit, Amherst Avenue at the bottom. The building would come out in the extension of the existing wall, out essentially to the property line. I'll speak to the setbacks in a moment. The building will go along the setback line and back along the westerly side of the property, back just to the bulkhead. Beyond the bulkhead, there will be a replacement of the deck, that is the deck that the chairman mentioned a moment ago. That is the extent of the building program. There's a lot to it. We've been round and round with our client, Mr. Zeltner, and the designers, especially the architect, Tom Sykes' office, Mark Petrella. They've done a wonderful job with this. There's been many iterations to get us to this point to try to ameliorate any negative impacts of the property. We recognize it's a very busy area of Margate and a very important area of Margate. It's so important that this building, as I say, a poster child for redevelopment. This building is in an extremely visible location in what I think is the most busy area in the season in the entire city of Margate. Maybe the beach is one thing, but I'm saying as far as the upland is concerned, this area is so busy, and this area deserves to have this building redeveloped, no question about it. It certainly is an eyesore, and blight is a word I don't even like to use for the city of Margate. It's certainly not that. It's such a wonderful community, but this building has really seen its time, and this is the time to make it go away. Let's talk a little bit more about the building program. The building is proposed with two levels. The first level will be elevated. It needs to be, we all know about FEMA these days. Everybody in the room, I'm sure, knows about the requirements to some extent of what is required, that is, for new elevations for buildings throughout the Barrier Islands, certainly no exception to the city of Margate. This property lies in two different flood zones. The flood zone beyond the bulkhead, that is waterward of the bulkhead, is in what they call the V zone, or the high velocity wave action zone. In that zone, building in that zone is severely restricted, and if any building is undertaken, it must meet the very strict requirements of the elevations in that zone. What that means for this particular property is that the bottom of the lowest structural member, in other words, a beam that will hold up the building, the bottom of that beam has to be elevated to a minimum elevation of 14, which is 12 plus 2, Margate, the 2 feet comes from Margate's add-on, but the 12 is a FEMA requirement. That would be the bottom of the beam. So think about a structure. You have a beam at elevation 14, the beam height maybe 12 to 14 inches. You have joists above that. You have the floor above that. For all the builders in the room, I'm not telling you what you don't deal with every day. That's going to put the floor about elevation 16 in what they call 88 datum. That's where this is designed. That would be fully FEMA compliant. It's a very strict requirement, and what it does is it causes this building to be elevated. So this building, as you see, Ralph Storr's old building, at the ground level, we're going to be well above that. The bottom of the ceiling, if you will, of the lower part of the building would be about 8 feet above that level, the floor about 10 feet above. And that is the minimum we can set that building and meet that requirement.
So the
We'd like
finished,
to
the
lower it
finished first floor will be at 10 feet above
about
ground
that,
level?
approximately
Thank
10
you.
feet, inches one way or the other, yeah. But we would certainly like to have the building a little lower for a lot of reasons, but there's no physical way to do that. So we need to meet FEMA, and that's what's required to do, and that's what we are doing. Now, on the first level above that, the ground part is open with some storage and whatnot. I'll just discuss that in a moment. But the first level above that is the proposed restaurant that's mentioned in Mr. McLaren's report. That restaurant will occupy just about the entirety of the first level above, the 10-foot above level, with the exception of, in the rear of the building, about a 200 square foot area will be an office for the marina and a small bait shop in support of the marina use. And again, I'll show you what we're doing with the marina in a moment. That would be on the first level. On the second level is a proposed office. That office is to be used by the owner of the property, Mr. Gormley. That will be for his own personal business. He will occupy the entirety of the upper level of the building. That is the proposal. Let's go down to the ground level now, because the ground level, I think, is, all the building is important. The ground level is, I think, of perhaps most importance in many ways. First of all, the entirety of what you see out there today between the building and the outside line, the back line of the parking, all that's going to be removed. There was a question about how are we going to take care of the existing fuel tanks that exist in there. They are going to be removed. So there will be a new tank installed. We're going to have hopefully a new guest dock in Margate where none exists, and all the boaters are really going to really welcome that. And hopefully this all gets done. So the existing tanks that exist in this location will be removed. A new tank, all the EPA standards will be installed in that almost exact location. At the ground level also, there are 4 parking spaces which will be positioned between, I'm going to use the word promenade, which I'm going to discuss in a moment. They'll be between the edge of the promenade and the backside of, let's say, the paving edge or the curb edge extended, which I'm going to go back to quickly to show you what that is. This one angled photograph back on A5. You see the established edge of the concrete here at this location with the tanks. You see the tank lids here. Back edge of the parking exists all the way down Amherst Avenue right to Lamberti's. That essentially is the property line. That will be the line of the building right at that location, which will leave about a 37-foot cartway over to the southerly side of Amherst Avenue. That is the curb line on Amherst Avenue, which is a little bit generous in this location. That narrows to about 30 feet up at Lamberti's and also as you get further east. But in our location, we'll still remain with about 37 feet of cartway driving area, which is essentially enough for the traffic in this location. Okay, so back on the ground level of the building quickly. There are 2 means which is required. Mr. Petrell may talk about that in a moment. There are 2 means of egress up into the building, vertical access to the building, a stair at one end, stair at the other end. There's fire code and things of that nature that we have to hit. So those stairs are in that location. There is a trash receptacle area here, a little small area in the back which is for receiving to an elevator. So any deliveries would come curbside, stop, go back this walkway, have a receiving area, be called in, get the elevator up to the first level or the second level of the building. This small area here is a vestibule entranceway into the building. So a patron, a customer, whatever, wants to come into the building, they can come into the building here, enter into this all-weather lobby, if you will, up the stairs or into the elevator, whichever way they decide to go up into the building. That is the extent of the building program and the parking. There'll be new new curbing to the extent it's required here. There'll be all concrete in this area for the parking. All the asphalt edge will be cleaned up and taken care of in accordance with the city engineer's requirement. All new utilities run to the building. Essentially, everything you see there is going to be taken away and all put back in brand new. Let's talk about this promenade for a moment. That's a very important part of the project. One, not only important for the community, as well as for our client, Mr. Gormley, but as well as the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey requires public access to be given to the waterfront for any projects that are built in close proximity to the waterfront. That public access, in this particular case, is a continuous promenade for the public to enjoy over private property, and then there will be an easement given from the owner to the city so that the public has full access to this area. All along, where they do not now, all along the frontage of the property, sideline to sideline. The intent, the idea for this generated from a study that our firm actually participated in for the city of Margate a few years back, post-Sandy sustainability study, during which time the planning board, members of the planning board participated very well as the governing body. I see Commissioner Amadeo here. During our study, we came up with various ideas of ways to improve Amherst Avenue. One of the comments back from the governing body, as well as the planning board members, was we need to improve public access to the waterfront. It's very important. It's a magnificent waterfront, and we all should enjoy that waterfront. It shouldn't be taken by any private person. I agree with that. So out of that was born this promenade idea. The idea is to take this promenade from end to end, that is from the city of, Borough of Longport's property line, all the way along the bulkhead, spanning completely across the subject property, down to intercept or link with the pedestrian pathway that's being designed and developed and will continue to be by the city of Margate on Washington Avenue, taking it all the way back toward Atlantic Avenue. So they're hopefully, think in the future, when one project after another is built, and this promenade, public way is considered as a part of every one of those projects, you have a public link from, say, Atlantic Avenue, walking up Washington, all the way to the bay, completely along the bay, all the way to Borough of Longport. I think it'd be magnificent. And this is, let's say, the first project that has the opportunity to provide that. And we look at that as a very important part of this project. So you can see the shaded area here. We will begin that at our westerly property line. It will go right along the bulkhead. Now, when we come to the east side of this, there's a bit of a building in the way there, so we can only take it as far as we can. That is our property line. We're going to return that and have it come right out to Amherst Avenue. Now, hopefully, when the next project comes, perhaps next door, or there's some agreement that can be made with the next door property owner to continue that along that location and take it one after the other after the other. As you work to the west, there will be a project in the very near future on the adjoining property to this. That promenade will be definitely incorporated into that property as well. So that will take the promenade another 100, and I guess it's 125 feet or something like that, to the next property down. After that, you're dealing with all public property all the way down, I believe, to Lamberti's. So there'll be an opportunity for the city, hopefully keep our fingers crossed, that bulkhead can all get rebuilt one time or another, and the promenade would continue all the way down. So again, we view that as very important, and there's been a lot of design and, a lot of extra detail, especially from the architects and structural engineers, to figure out a way to span that promenade, to make sure that public way stays wide open, and the public can see under that building, walk along that promenade, and enjoy the use of that waterfront. Yes, Mr. Palmisano.
What height will that promenade be in reality? Up the ramp to what height?
That'll be approximately, I would say, about 1 foot above what's there today. We're going to ramp it a little bit.
Only 1 foot above the ground level?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Because we need headroom to the building. There's got to be at least 8 foot of headroom.
So when you come off to the south end, is there going to be a ramp on that end too?
On the south end? Here?
Of the promenade?
Well, we will, if this property next to us is not developed by the time we are, we're going to have to transition to the sidewalk.
I have to have a ramp there? Or...
A small ramp, foot or 12 feet or something.
And how wide is the promenade?
The promenade varies in width. It is a minimum where we're bound by the depth of a parking space here, the building, the bulkhead. There's a lot of restrictions here. So it goes from a minimum of 5 to a maximum of 8, and we'd like to get it to 10 when we tear the building down, and we decide where this bulkhead's going, and we get the permit from the DEP to go 2 feet outside, we're hopeful to gain a little bit more room to do that.
Yeah, the
And
wide,
We've made that application to go 2 feet outside with the bulkhead.
because I see it's 3'7" on one end, but I don't know what that
Yeah,
is.
no, minimum 5. In the center area here, it's approximately, is it 8 in the center, John, or is it 10 in the center? 8. 5 to 8, and hopefully we can get a little bit more if the DEP cooperates
Yeah, I'm
and gets
thinking
us
of,
a little spread.
people walking with strollers coming both
Yeah.
ways and being wide enough for pedestrians. Going to Junior's for ice cream or going to Lamberti's or wherever.
Right, no, I agree with you, and we
That's-
understand that.
That's big, the pedestrian walkway.
It is.
That's very big.
We are doing whatever we can possibly do to maximize that, because that's important to us as well.
And that's open air?
Open air. Walk right through it. And it'll be, no.
Nothing overhang?
No, there'll be a building over top, but 8 feet of clearance. The building spans that.
So the building will be on top of?
Correct.
the pedestrians?
Correct. In this location, and when there's no building, it's wide open.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. I want to talk very briefly about the marina, to show you what we're doing there. Where is that? Then I'll go on to a couple of quick things, and I can wrap up my testimony. Site
Excuse
plan-
me, there's a ceiling overhead, but it's an open view of the bay, because
Open view of the
everything's,
bay.
yeah.
I'm going to show you that one moment.
All right.
That's a good comment. Very quickly, this is A7. We've discussed all the improvements on the upland in this location. This is just a depiction of the marina. Completely brand-new marina to be rebuilt, all new floating docks, state-of-the-art design. You can see the marina slips on this side, the fuel dock at the end, some jet ski location, personal watercraft locations on the right side. Like that's a placeholder here, you can see those. Subject to DEP, waterfront development permits, we're seeking those now. We're keeping our fingers crossed, another 2-3 months we'll have this.
You already referenced that exhibit, correct?
I did, that is A7, thank you, Mr. Meadows. Okay. Another aspect of the project, the signage. It was mentioned accurately very well by Mr. McLaren in his report. I'll go through that quickly, and we can identify the variances and things like that on the signage. On the upper part of the drawing, this is A9, prepared by Mr. Petrella. It's a very absolutely beautiful rendering of the building. The rear elevation, as you can see it, I'm going to save the architecture for Mark. I'd love to talk about this building, but I'm going to save that for him. I'll talk about the sign. On the top of the building, you see that? That is technically a roof-mounted sign, not necessarily, not legal by your ordinance. Your ordinance does not permit roof-mounted signs. We were very careful in the design so that the top of the lettering does not go beyond the height of the roof. It might look that way here because we're looking on an upwards angle, but I will tell you, my testimony is that the top height of the lettering is not higher. It's less in height, that is, than the roof. So it's a rooftop sign, but it does not stick above the roof, if you will. There was a question by Mr. McLaren about the size of that sign. We're permitted, I believe, 12 square feet. And that sign, if you box the letters out, just put a square around that, it would calculate out to about 63 square feet, so it's over in size. However, this is a sign that will not be seen by a residential property. No residential property will see that sign. That sign is really there for the passersby in the boats. The nearest boater passing by, those docks are 275 feet in length. The nearest passerby is more than 300 feet. We want to make sure they can see the building. And I think the sign is very attractive in that location, in my opinion. And I love the old-fashioned type, if you will, the lettered signs like that. They bring back a lot of memories to old signage throughout Atlantic City and Atlantic County and whatever. There's another sign on the rear of the building. I don't see it, Mark.
Is that the bait shop sign?
It's on the other exhibit. The ordinance, I believe, says you're permitted one sign per elevation. I think that's the interpretation of that. The rear is here, lower right. This is A10. The word bait shop. So again, for the passersby, you pull in, you get fuel, or you pull in, you want to get bait, or whatever you want to tackle, whatever the case may be. You can see right where the bait shop. It's really an informational directive sign. So you pull in, you know right where to go. You walk down the floating dock. You're up the ramp. You take a set of stairs. You're 10 foot up, like I said before. There's the bait shop. Positioned right in the corner of the building. Again, a very small sign, and no one will see that other than us boaters. no residential property will see that. In the front of the building,
How do you access that from the street, the bait shop?
Mark, you want to answer that? You sworn in yet?
Yes,
Might as well answer that real quickly.
Access from the street actually comes through the parking area. There's a direct access from the promenade, the public promenade that Arthur mentioned, down a pier towards the back of the building, and there's the rear stair.
Thank you.
So it does provide direct access to the marina as well.
I forgot that. Here it is here. I'll just show you that. Enter here. This is A8. Enter here through the gate, on the deck to this location. You're at the same low level, right back to here. This is a ramp down to the floating pier. There's the stairs up. Get you in the bait shop.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Good job, Mark. Okay. The other signs, quickly, I'll go back to this, A9. A9. Let's go to the front of the building. Again, the comment was made, the ordinance, the interpretation is such that you're permitted one sign per facade. This is the front facade of the building. We propose Captain Andy's, the wording on the right side of the building, 90-foot long building, Captain Andy's on the left side of the building. Again, matching the lettering design. These are individual letters placed right on the wall, very attractive, very nicely done, and they fit in the overall architecture and aesthetics of the building. And
Are they
that's
lit
the way
from
they were
inside or
designed.
outside? Are they illuminated from inside, or are they illuminated from outside? Is the light shine on them, or do they shine out?
How do you want to do that? Mr. Gormley, how are we doing that? Are they internal illuminated? Yeah. The letters will be internally illuminated, so they won't have any glare or any lights shining on us. Good, that's a good question. Okay, they are the extent of the signs. I can go quickly to the variances for the signs.
Just want to ask a couple questions before we go into the variances.
Yes.
Talk about the bulkhead. What's the condition of the existing bulkhead, and how will the new bulkhead help the area?
I mentioned the bulkhead. We've asked the DEP to allow us to go 24 inches outside of what's there. There's a lot of reasons for that. They mostly deal with construction technique. I think we're going to get that approval based on the conversations I'm having with those folks. That bulkhead was another part of that study that I mentioned a few moments ago that the city and the planning board participated in. There was significant deliberation back and forth as to what would be the proper elevation to fix for the top of bulkheads throughout the city of Margate. And we made various recommendations. At the end of the day, I think the recommendation we came up with was elevation 9. Some thought it was too high, some thought it was too low, whatever. It was finally adopted at elevation 9, which is pretty significant. It's elevation 9, what they call 88 datum. You heard me mention that a moment ago. 88 datum is about 1.3 feet above old mean sea level datum. So when somebody used to say, we kind of all are familiar with it, the 100-year flood was elevation 10 in mean sea level datum. Well, that would really mean 11.3 today. That extra 1.3 feet, that's a lot. We're going to gain an extra 1.3 feet of surge. So this 88 datum stuff that everybody's using, Mr. Galantino, every building that's built is built on this 88 datum stuff now. It's very important. And it basically raises the table for everyone 1.3 feet, which is going to give us a significant amount of additional storm protection. This bulkhead will be built at elevation 9. Elevation 9 in 88 datum, which would be old 10.3. Imagine, more than the 100-year floodplain which existed for so many years.
I think it's my understanding, though, that the way the promenade that was designed for the city, not this one, but the promenade level, it would only be a 4-foot, it'd be like a 4-foot fence along the promenade, is that correct? So the bulkhead's not going to be
No.
The bulkhead will be about the top of the bulkhead, about 4 feet over the ground level of the walkway.
We think the ground here, we think we can slope it just a little bit and get the ground to about 6. If we can
No,
get
I
the
mean
ground-
the promenade.
Yeah, the promenade. If we can get
Right.
that to 6 and the bulkhead 9, that's 3 feet.
Yeah.
Maybe there would be a small railing on it or something for safety. That's something we come later.
Right.
Yeah, but that was a good comment.
One more question before we go into the variances. It was in Mr. McLaurin's report, the anticipated hours of operation of the three uses.
Really, it's driven by, the office is going to have normal business hours. It's 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 5, whatever time Mr. Gormley decides to wake up and go to work. I'm not sure of that, but normal business hours at 5 days a week. As far as the restaurant, which is really, I guess, the key question here, this is being designed and being proposed as a casual dining waterfront experience. And that said, it's primarily targeted to dinner hours. Now, Mr. Gormley's going to hopefully open this building and start with that in mind. If the shoulder times to that is the lunch, if it appears that the customers want to be there for lunch, he's going to expand it to the lunch hours. Not the primary reason he's doing this, but he would open it to lunch. If that's working out real well, if there's a lot of fishermen around or folks rising early and want to have breakfast, not too many opportunities there for breakfast, he may open it for breakfast as well. So he's going to have to see how the business goes to make that final determination what he's going to actually offer. Again, start with the casual dining. There's hours that the city allows businesses such as that to stay open, whatever they are. I believe it might be, it could even be up to 4 a.m., which is the city ordinance. Certainly, we would not look for anything more than that. And then as far as on the lower side, primarily at dinner hours, it may, depending upon the type of business that he sees, it may drift into lunch at first, see how that goes. If it works and there's a call for it, a demand for it, he could offer breakfast as well.
Great, thank you.
So worst case scenario, 6 in the morning till
6, 7
10
in
at
the
night?
morning. Whatever dinner would be over and the customers would want to leave, it's hard to predict that at this
I
point
have
in
a
time.
Well, actually, that's best case scenario for the applicant, but what about seasonal? Is it year round? Is it going to be?
Designed as a year-round operation, and the intent is to stay open year-round.
For the restaurant.
For the restaurant, as well as obviously for the office. Marina, you might get 8-9 months out of it. And the rest of that will essentially be shut down, but for a few souls like me.
In terms of the office portion, are there customers that will be seen in the office at all? That go up to the office to seek your services, which,
No, it's not a walk-in retail insurance office. No,
Okay.
it's mainly just for the employees to
okay.
work.
How many employees in the office?
There are a total of 9, including Mr. Gormley.
That's for the office, right?
That's the office.
Not for the restaurant.
Okay, the variances.
One more.
Oh.
I just want to be clear, where it shows the jet skis, that's not for jet ski rentals, that's for private owners to rent the dock space, correct?
Private owners.
No rentals of jet skis?
Not to my knowledge, no rentals. Private owners.
Good.
All right, I see the promenade on the print. It says concrete. Is that proposed concrete? I mean, I think when you leave the promenade, we call it a boardwalk promenade.
Right. It was called that in the report for the most part.
For the remaining all the way down to Lamberti's, it's probably gonna be a wooden walkway, right?
Good point.
Or
Under the building, we could do it to the surface in wood, right? Okay.
like
We would do that.
mahogany or something, some kind of decking, a decking or whatever?
Under the building, we could do that. Yeah.
Sure.
It's like-
On your drawings, the buildings at both ends, existing buildings.
Yes.
The one to the Atlantic City side, on your drawing of existing conditions, it shows it, maybe 2.5 feet setback. But on the drawing for the improvements, it appears right on the line.
You see that?
Which is it?
Let me go to the survey, Clem. 1 second. On the right sideline here,
Yeah.
to the east of the building,
Correct.
there, the building is set back just a bit, a couple feet. I believe there's a deck, a frame deck that essentially is on the property line. That might be what you're looking at there. The deck goes to the property line, the building's back a couple feet.
And at the other end,
On the
I don't see a dimension.
westerly side, the building is actually, I think, slightly in an encroaching situation onto our property. That building's going to be taken down.
That's part of this project?
No, another project, but I think it will be taken down sometime soon.
I can't hear you.
It will be taken down, that building, but it is slightly in an encroaching situation right now.
You expect it to be down by the time you would be up?
I think the two owners will be talking together to make that decision, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I can't find the 8-foot fence anywhere.
The what?
The 8-foot fence?
Oh, okay, what that is just for security, along the front of the building, underneath, that is where the promenade is here at the bulkhead. We're not saying we're going to absolutely put that fence in there, but we would want to get the approval for it. Think of the bulkhead sticking up about 3 feet, the entire underside of the building wide open, the marina wide open and whatnot. We would think that, we would like to somehow seal that off. We know if we do that, it has to be 75% open to remain visible through for the public. We will definitely do that. So the idea would be to either go from the bulkhead up to the underside of the building, or set back a foot or so and go all the way up to the underside of the building from the deck, which in that case would be 8 foot.
That's where we're looking through?
Looking through.
From Amherst Avenue?
There was a question asked of me, and I didn't answer that. Yes. That was I want to show that view. Here it is here.
Bottom right?
Bottom right, A9, front of the building, looking at the water. You can see the water in the background. There's the promenade. Bulkhead sticking up there, the brown shaded
That's where
area.
the fence would be?
Wide open.
That's where the fence would be?
That would be, if we're going to put the fence, that's where it would be.
And if you put a fence, would it be like a 4-inch, just small half-inch piece
It's
of
going to have to
metal?
be 75% open. So I'm thinking, Mark, we haven't designed that yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be something
Because you're asking
aluminum.
for a variance. for the
Aluminum,
8 foot.
something, whatever.
Yeah, you're asking for a variance.
Something real attractive, believe me. That would be the idea. It would just strictly be for security if we think that's a necessity. So the measurement would be from the ground. Mr. McLaren had it absolutely correct. The 8 feet sounds like a high fence, but we've got 3 feet of bulkhead. We have an 8-foot space to take care of. So one way or another, we may have to do that. So if to the extent we do, we would ask this board for favorable consideration.
Would you describe the variances, please?
Let's, just throw it?
Just go through. Yes.
I'll try to, I'm running a little long here. I want to be a little quicker than I am. I apologize for that. Let's talk about the C variances first. Kind of lump them a little bit together. I'll go back to A8. We need variances for the side yard setback to the east, side yard setback to the west, as well as the front yard setback. Front yard setback is 0, right along the property line. I showed you the photograph a few moments ago. Why was that location picked? We did obviously discuss that with the engineer, but also we went to the site repeated times. The Lambertis in this view, this is A5. That is the limit of the Lambertis building. We extended that line straight down. We said, is it appropriate for this location? We wanted to prove that, so we went to the juniors building next door on A4, their large deck. That line is the line of our proposed building. Take that line, extend it across the front of our building, all the way down to Lambertis, draw a straight line between them. That, to me, is the average setback of these buildings.
Yeah, but Juniors is a deck, right?
Juniors is a deck.
And this project has an actual building
This is a
going
building.
up to the property line.
Correct. That's a
Right.
building right to
Which
that
is
line, that's
0.
correct. Yeah, that's
Right.
correct. And again, as
So
I
it's not-
say,
you can't- What I'm saying is Juniors is a deck, it's open.
I agree.
Right.
Okay. So the intent was to align with the line of juniors. If you see the line here, this is the backside of the parking. Take that all the way down, right, and align it in a true line with the front wall of Lamberti's building. That is how we established the line. And that is essentially the property line of Mr. Gormley's ownership.
There will be a 3-foot setback with the request that's being
That's-
made tonight, correct?
That's for the parking, because that easement area where the parking extends beyond that.
Right.
All right, that area, you talk about Lamberti's being equal to where your property is going to come out to. Lamberti's has a sidewalk out in front of it, though. You won't have a sidewalk.
If we have a 3-foot setback, there's a 3 foot more where the parking extends 3 feet further into the street than our building does. This line.
Your
Mr.
parking
Palmisano,
will
look,
extend
this
3
line.
feet.
We're 3 feet short of that line. So the building would be 3 feet behind that. The edge of the parking that exists would stick 3 feet past our property line. That's where it is now. We're not changing that. We're going to a point that's 3 feet short of the edge of the parking.
Yeah, when I look at Lamberti's is equal to where yours is coming to. Buildings.
Building.
Building.
There's a difference. The difference, and it's an important difference. The curb-to-curb dimension at Lamberti's, if you drive by there, is tight. It's 30 feet. Ours is 37 feet.
I measured 40 today.
Well, take 3 feet off of that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yours is 40.
Correct.
To your-
37
to your
feet will remain as wide open to the back of the parking spaces. So there's 7 more feet here that, for cartway, for driving, than there is at the Lamberti site.
When I look at juniors, where people walk in front of juniors, they have planters so the cars don't hit the people. They have planters out there in front of juniors, where it should be a sidewalk.
Well, that's what the promenade's for.
You've got extra space there. I mean, there is about 7 more feet of
We're
there.
doing a promenade.
That could be the future promenade right there, right?
Right.
Where it
I
would
mean,
extend
it's
off-site.
needed. It's needed there. I'm concerned about yours. That's all.
That's why our promenade.
That's why you have the promenade to go up and inside.
There was, the study that we did actually had 2 alternates. One alternate was to have the promenade go to the back side of the parking spaces. The second was along the bayfront. Obviously, the bayfront is where you want to be, but the issue that the municipality had, the board had, with the promenade in this location is the cars would be backing across it. It's an unsafe condition. So that's why we relocated to the front, and it pushed everything out a little bit further toward the street.
So I'm assuming that the upcoming project will probably also may come out as far as this.
You might guess they would.
Do you think there's any hindrance to the people parking further down Amherst Avenue that need to back out? Will it hinder their vision to, because everyone backs out of there, except for the guys in the trucks who have to.
Interesting question. I may defer that to our traffic consultant.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. I don't believe that would be a problem, but I'll defer that to Mr.
Just an
Topside.
ask.
That's a good question.
One question. If this was a mixed residential commercial project, under the ordinance, there'd be no setback required, correct?
Permitted to be on the property line. That's correct.
But we are providing 3 feet.
Correct. If we had a residential use in there, it would be a mixed commercial residential.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. So as far as the setbacks are concerned, let me look at that, and I'll tell you why also. I'm going to go back to A8. As I mentioned when I started about the DEP and all the restrictions of no extra building beyond the bulkhead line, we're squeezed. We have an area of land approximately 27 feet from the front of the building back to the old building line or the bulkhead line. That's all we have. We're not permitted to put any building out beyond the bulkhead line. So everything is, if you will, squeezed into our ownership on the upland side of the bulkhead, which is why the building is more elongated than rectangular. We'd love to have a nice rectangular building and not ask for these variances, but we can't do that because we're restricted severely by the state of New Jersey. With that restriction, and to get the square footage that's necessary for the restaurant use, we by necessity have to just stretch the building out a little bit as you see it. So the building expanded such that it will be set back from the right-hand side in this location 5.5 feet, 2.5 feet over the water adjacent to the building next door, 3.5 feet on the westerly side of the building. And another reason for the elongation of that building is what we need to do at the ground level. We need 2 means of vertical ingress, egress to the building, 2 sets of stairs. We have one on the right side, one on the left. We need an area on our property for trash. We have it here in this location. We need to get in the building. There's a small vestibule here. There's an elevator which we need to have by code. We have the elevator here and the little receiving area there. That leaves us no room. There's nothing we can, these are facts that we cannot change. So it leaves us no room other than to spread the building wider. We would like to have a different configuration. It just isn't possible. We are constrained by the physical attributes of this property. That is the narrowness of the property and the DEP's requirement not allowing any more building over the water.
The remaining variances outside of the setbacks.
Quickly, the signage, now go to the parking, quickly the signage, the rooftop sign is not permitted. We think it's desirable in this location. The size of the sign at 63 square feet, if you calculate it in its entirety, I think is very proportional to the building size. In my opinion, it's not objectionable, and again, it's not visible from any residence. I think it's well positioned, and I think it's justified. The small bait shop sign is a very, very small sign. It's the second sign on that rear facade. It's a necessity. One way or another, we have to identify that location on the building. The location of the sign relative to the side of the building, the elevation view here, back on A10. Sorry. The location of the two signs out front, you can see how the building is designed. They're designed as part of the facade. If the sign were to move on A10, if this sign were to move 9 feet from the edge of that wall, it just would not fit with the building design at all. And I think my opinion, it's appropriately placed along the side of the building. If we were to take the sign and put it around the side of the building, I don't believe, and move it 9 feet from the corner, I don't think we need a variance for it, but it would not be that, in my opinion, that useful, that sign. I think the signs are tastefully done. They're small, and another thing that would help us toward hopefully gaining your favor for the variance for the signs, the total we would be permitted is 50 square feet for one sign. We have two signs at 39 square feet. So although we have two, although they're tighter to the edges of the building than the ordinance technically permits, in total, they're smaller than one sign could actually be if we put it right in the dead center of the building. So I think on balance, if you look at all that, in my opinion, they're well done, nicely designed by the architect, and I don't see any negative associated with those two signs.
Very good.
All right?
As to the variances, will the purposes of the Municipal Land Use Act be advanced by a deviation or departure from the zoning ordinance requirements you went over? And would the benefits of the deviation substantially outweigh any detriment?
I think as far as the setbacks are concerned, that, Mr. Zettler, is, well, I would refer to as a C1 variance. We're constrained by the dimensions of the property and the other environmental restrictions, which are forcing the dimensions of the building to be what you see they are, as they are. So I think that sometimes you would say that's a hardship. I don't like to use that word when we're building something new, but to the extent that we're required to do so by the DEP, mostly forces the variances. And I believe that in this particular case, because the neighbors are not impacted whatsoever by that, I think that the variances are justified as far as the C variances are concerned. The sign variances, I think I went through that in detail. And again, each one of those I think is very well done. And in my opinion, no negative impact associated with any of those.
Okay. Does this project encourage the efficient use of land and satisfy a need to revitalize the bayfront, in your opinion?
Well, it certainly does. Again, a poster child for redevelopment, I've said it twice now or three times, certainly is that. And the aesthetics of this building are absolutely magnificent. And it certainly is a benefit to the community as a whole.
Does the project encourage capital improvements for the benefit of the community, being the promenade and the bulkhead?
Certainly, yes.
Does the development provide adequate air, light, and open space and aesthetically improve the site?
It's a large lot when you consider the water as well, and the coverage, considering the entire ownership, is extremely light.
Good.
The parking, can we talk about that?
Let's talk about the parking. You're dying to talk
Let's
about
do
the
that
parking.
quickly. Okay.
Good.
So it's interesting. Let's go back to my site plan for a moment. This is A8. And hopefully I can wrap things up here with my testimony. The 4 parking spaces that are proposed, we're proposing them as you see it. They essentially take every inch we put for parking we have proposed on the property. Because of the other uses that we're required to have at the grade level, this is what we're left with. The promenade that I mentioned, you see it in the shaded area. By the way, promenade would extend here, that is more or less in the center of the property, and line up with the sidewalk on the opposite side of Adams Avenue in Amherst. So this painted crosswalk would be put in this location for safety purposes. So any folks walking northbound on Adams Avenue could cross right at this location, go through this open space, and enter the promenade right in that location. So that's part of the overall design. And by the way, that was something that was also pointed out in the report that I've mentioned a few times. I want to go to this area. The area along Amherst, back on A5 Avenue, as you see, it's kind of interesting. We have a lot of parking in this location. Now, that said, it's a very busy location. This photo was taken yesterday, middle of the winter time. That's representative of what you see out there, and I'm around this area many, many days of my life for the last 20, 25 years with what I do there. And this is kind of like a representation of what you have out there for about 7.5 to 8 months of the year. So now we're going to talk about what do we do for the other few months, the other high season months, where this seashore community, thank God, is as busy as it is and attractive to everyone as it is. And the seashore communities that don't have that luxury, that sometimes their property looks like that in the summertime, and go to Atlantic City and see what I'm talking about. Certainly not what we want for the city of Margate. So you don't necessarily design a community around a high peak season and then have acres and acres of open space parking for 8 to 9 months of the year. Certainly makes no sense. So we have a property here that's in an area where there is a lot of parking. So if our customers happen to come when the parking's available, or another business comes and the parking's available, they're going to use that parking. It's public parking, which is perfectly right, the right thing to do. What is our parking need? If you use your current ordinance, Mr. McLaren had it specified in his report, correctly so, the calculation would be for all the uses added together, 60 total parking spaces. So we have 4. So say we have a net deficiency of 56. But if this building were to be open tomorrow, somebody went and opened the door, it has a marina, it has a store, it has an apartment, what does that yield? How many parking spaces would they need? The calculation using the same ordinance is 30. So when you really look at the deviation versus what's there now versus what it's going to be, there's 26 parking spaces deviation, a shortfall. Now, one other comment on Mr. Stewart's property, Ralph Stewart's property, we had this before. It's anecdotal, but I just want to throw it out there. The way this property was used for the multitude of years, until not that long ago, there was a 60-passenger headboat, party boat. There was a 50-passenger pontoon boat that went out twice a day, 7 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There were 5 charter boats. There were 3 permanent full-time charter boats, the old fishing funds. So I did all the math and added that up. And if you add those uses to this site, the way this was operated for so many years, with really no difficulty, no problem, that yielded approximately a demand of 70 parking spaces. Our demand is 60. So in my mind, I'm trying to put this together and say, if it operated for all these years at a demand of 70 spaces, we need 60. The actual difference is 26. Is that so significant that it would cause this board or others to say, this project is not approvable? Is it that significant? When you look here and you see all of a sea of parking out here, it's for the taking, and everybody uses it. Now, there's another interesting thing to talk about with the parking. This is a classic, what they call shared parking concept. You have a parking space that could be used by different people doing different things during the day. This isn't pull up to the mall. The mall needs 500 spaces. You only have 200. Everybody comes to the store to shop at the same time. It closes at the same time, and you have a shortage of parking. That's not what this is. I want to look at this in the true context. In the morning, who is out here in the height of the season? Who is using those parking spaces? I'll tell you who's using them. The fishermen are using them. As you may know, I've owned property here for 30 years. I see what the people do there. In the morning, that parking is mostly open. The fishermen come early, they go fishing. They use their boats and whatnot. At some point in the day, that will transition. Fishermen will kind of go away for the most part. Some folks will come, you'll have a blend. Some boaters, not necessarily fishermen, but people using their boats more in the middle of the day. You'll see that transition. You'll see some residences, some visitors, the few lunch places that are available, some restaurant people will begin to come. As the end of the day comes, this parking again becomes open. What then happens is it transitions to the evening. Now come the dinner folks, and they will use this area very heavily on high season, on weekends, whatever, holidays, and the parking will be essentially filled. And that's the way this transitions. This is a multi-use type of parking area. Very interesting. And this is something that exists in every waterfront, bayfront community I've worked on in my entire life. And I say we should be thankful that we have a problem in Margate, that there is a parking demand in Margate that is very high for these peak seasons. That's what drives our community. That's what drives property values to what they are. That's what drives this waterfront to be what it is. If you look at what was done here in Margate in the last 20 years or so, with this magnificent development, the restaurant development, let's compare it to Summers Point. They have a much bigger area to deal with in Summers Point. And look how that has languished, and yet Margate has flourished. And so my point overall, I'm saying that the net deviation in real numbers is 26 parking spaces. The practical deviation, in my opinion, there is none, because this property was occupied and operated for so many years with a higher parking demand than we have today. We're proposing tomorrow, that is. In addition to that, the sharing of the parking, which is real, which opens up parking for different times of the day for different users. I think it's a real analysis that you go through and come like, oh, this, and Mr. Shropshire, he can also supplement my testimony if he feels that's necessary to do so. So, in total, I think there is an impact of every project. Certainly, there's impacts from this project. Now, I'm talking specifically about parking. I think the impact, however, is ameliorated because of the conditions that I've described, because of the prior use of the property. And I think that the impact, although there, is not so significant that it would be a decision-making factor in deciding whether or not this property should be redeveloped or this property should remain as it is. I don't think it rises near to that level.
Mr. Ponzio, of all the professionals that testify before this board, you are the best at presenting your case. So much that I get mesmerized sometimes until I listen to what you're saying. So what you're telling us now is this project is going to alleviate parking problems in this area.
No, I didn't. I'd like to say that. Unfortunately, I didn't say that.
I think you did.
Well, okay.
I think you did.
Okay.
So I'm just, you really carry me up
All right.
sometimes, or I have to come back down to the
I'll
ground,
take
but
that.
it's a
I'll take
compliment.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a compliment.
One thing I think it's important for you to bring up, driving to this location is not the only way people are going to get there. What are the other ways people are going to get there? And that's historic to that area.
We're all creatures of habit. Myself, I love these restaurants like we all do. I love the marina. I know times to arrive, and I think, as I said, creatures of habit. If we are going to go to one of these fine dining establishments, or you're going to go to the marina or whatever, you kind of feel it out. You know when you should arrive, when you shouldn't arrive, what days are better than others. In addition to that, myself, my son's sitting in the room, John's here. We love these restaurants. We don't take our car there in the summertime. We take the Uber, we take the taxi. If we're in the neighborhood, we walk. If I'm happen to be on my boat, I walk there. We're all doing that. There's a lot of locals inhabiting this area. It's wonderful. All the new residences here, they're driving the economy of this area. And
How about by boat?
Well, I didn't mention that. There's something that's very important on Mr. Gormley's property. We're a little different. I'm glad you said that, Ben. We're a little different from the restaurants on the other side of the street. We have the marina. The intent is to open up slips for transient use, to encourage people, it's so great, to come by boat, have somewhere to go, and have some fantastic waterfront dining. So think about what happens. If you have a slip open, that's one less customer that's going to have a permanent slip there, that's going to park his car and use his boat. So that car is gone. That same person that's going to come to that restaurant, and when we take our boats, we go out in the summertime, we go to a restaurant, you're not one or two people, you load the boat up, you all have a blast, you take that boat, you go through the waterway, you pull up, you take a slip. Now you folks that came to that restaurant, you didn't come by car. You get two for the price of one by having transient slips to help alleviate the
Are
parking
they all
demand.
transient, or some of them?
Not all.
How many?
Not all. That's going to be, we're going to start out with 3 or 4, and then we're going to transition that. If it appears that really is a big part of this business, then that's where this is going.
Okay.
So again, that's another part of this. It's very important. Look, we recognize the parking issue like everybody in this room does, no question about it. And
Arthur?
anything we can do to ameliorate the impact, we are trying to do, we will do. And you can see that through all the technique that we've gone through to get us to this point.
Arthur?
That is a prime focus.
Quick question for you.
Yes, Mr.
If you're dancing around a little bit on the transient parking, why don't you decide tonight and dedicate some of it, because then that counts for parking? And then it alleviates your variance.
We have Mr.
I
Gormley
think
here.
Roger put in
There.
a half spot.
Ask
for a
Sean what
slip.
will be there.
So if you had 4 slips, that means it's 2 more parking spots that you've already dedicated, which can transverse to,
We've got four dedicated transient slips. And I would think that four boat slips could hold
right, but that
16
gives you by
at
law
least.
2 more parking spaces?
Right, that helps out.
Roger, is that
By
good?
law?
4 equates to 2, and then, okay. Is that it, Ben?
One last question, final question.
Presentation.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Hugo.
my question. As to the parking variance, would the purposes of the Municipal Land Use Act be advanced by deviation from that zoning ordinance requirement, and would the benefits of the deviation substantially outweigh any detriment?
I think they do for all the reasons stated.
Thank you. I have nothing further from Mr. Ponzio.
Thank you.
I don't think he has any more voice off, but
Not much.
he might have a little.
Are there bike racks on the premises?
Where's Mark? Can you fit any bike racks in there, Mark?
We don't show any yet. We don't show any at this time.
Right, okay. We're not showing any at this time. It's a consideration. It's something I think we'll definitely look at. It's a good idea.
From the city's perspective, the city has a bike grant, and we are putting bike racks right nearby the Washington Avenue
great.
Pier, so.
Great.
The idea is to service the whole area.
John Barnhart.
Before we start talking.
Okay. Mr. Barnhart,
Yes.
concerning the engineer's report to the board, have you reviewed that?
Yes, I have.
First, would the board stipulate to Mr. Barnhart's
Yes.
credentials, licensed engineer in New Jersey? Yes. Talk about the review comments and the waivers request.
Sure. I'll be very brief. I'm just addressing Remington and Brink's engineering letter, which is dated February 2nd, 2018. The letter's in two sections. The first section is with regard to checklist items, and everybody has a copy of it. I won't read each one individually. But what we would like to do is actually we will, if we're fortunate enough to receive an approval this evening, we will provide all the items in the checklist section of Remington and Brink's report, with one exception. We are requesting what I'm going to call a partial waiver from providing a written traffic impact statement. The reason I'm calling it a partial waiver is because you will hear shortly, we do have an expert in traffic, a traffic engineer on our team that will be providing direct testimony regarding traffic and parking, and you will be able to answer him and ask him any questions with regard to that topic. So all the other items in the checklist section, we will provide as a condition of site plan approval if we do receive that this evening. With regard to the technical comments, I was fortunate enough to have a conference with Remington and Vernick folks about each one of the details, the comments in their general review section, and we are on the same page with all of them. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them specifically. The storm sewer pipe, they were nice enough to provide some as-built information on that, and we can easily address that. The positioning of that storm sewer pipe, and we are willing to provide the easement that is requested by the city engineer for that existing storm sewer pipe. We did discuss pedestrian circulation and ADA routes, and they are with some minor modifications to the plan. They are comfortable with how we will address them. And the balance of the items are technical in nature with regard to how are we going to connect to utilities and some things like that. All of the comments in that report we can address. Roger, I know you made a comment with regard to, in your report with regard to addressing each of the items. I'm happy to talk specifically about anything in this report, but in the interest of time, I'm not sure that that's really necessary this evening. But if there is something you would like further testimony on, I'm happy to provide it.
No, I think a lot of these items are normal, just, it's on a checklist, so you have to mention it.
Correct.
I don't think either one of any of these items will make or break the testimony that you've already provided. I think if you agreed to comply with the relevant ones, if you're lucky enough to get the approvals or fortunate enough to get the approvals, I think we can discuss that after that.
Yes, we are proposing, we will comply with everything in the report, as I mentioned, but for the one waiver that we are requesting regarding the written traffic impact statement.
Some of these items you need to get a permit anyway, so.
Correct. The majority of items in this report are items that when we get into the construction document phase of the project are items that we will be providing just as a matter of design.
I guess one question I would have is, Jimmy, do they need fire suppression for this type of building? So you're going to have a fire vault? We would probably need to see what that's going to be.
You're talking about like a fire meter vault?
Right.
Yeah, I'm assuming that we'll have a dual meter pit that will house the domestic and the fire.
Okay.
John, you have to move that telephone pole that's on the property?
Are we moving that telephone pole? The utility pole that's there now is going away, correct?
Does that to be moved?
That pole's gonna go away. Any other question? Okay.
Paul, Mark Petrella. Very excited to call Mr. Petrella. He's going to describe the architecture for you, which took months and months of planning, and I think you're going to be very excited to hear about it. First, Mark, state your credentials for the board, unless the board will stipulate to his credentials as a licensed architect.
He has been
State of New
before the
Jersey.
board enough. We accept his credentials.
Thank you very much. Good. Okay. So,
Thank you. Mr. Pongio did a great job explaining the program of the building, what's happening at each floor. So I'm not going to focus on that. What I do want to talk about is the exterior design, the thought process that we went through with that, and mainly the massing. So it's our belief that a good architectural design starts with building massing. There are ways to make a building look good by applying different materials, and certainly windows help the building look better. But a key point is to start with a nice massing. And so how do we do that? One, looking at the footprint, Mr. Pongio touched on this a little bit in his testimony regarding the L-shaped configuration. We learned that the porch portion that projects out over the water is within the existing footprint of the building, and that's permitted by DEP. The other leg of the building runs parallel to Amherst Avenue, and certainly an L-shaped building helps in our overall building massing rather than just a rectangular box. The second way that we mass the building, looking how to improve the massing, is with the building facades. Rather than building a straight wall up, which we could have done, we're incorporating a lot of architectural detail. We're stepping facades back. Want to refer to Exhibit A9, which is the exterior perspectives that Mr. Pongio also referenced in his testimony. This is actually a new exhibit you didn't see in the original submission. So these are 3 exterior perspectives. The top view shows the view from the water, and you can see the configuration of the building in the L shape. Certainly there's a lot of fenestration, which helps with the overall aesthetic of the building. Lots of ins and outs with the facade. You can see at the intermediate level, which we refer to as the first level where the restaurant is, there's a good portion of that building that steps out from the massing of the upper floor. At the back of the building, there's the deck that is actually constructed above the existing deck. Again, is permitted by DEP, but we're actually just recreating that at a higher level. Of course, it's important that that be at the same level as the restaurant. Looking at the other 2 views on the perspectives, we have 2 views from the Amherst Avenue side. We did talk about that we have a 0 setback on that side, but it's not for the entire facade. Again, we're incorporating some relief in that facade, so it's not just one straight wall all the way up to the roof. You'll see that the level, again, the restaurant level directly above the parking, that's designed as a projected bay for the main facade of the building. At the end, closest to Ventnor, there's a larger gable. And then the other perspective view, the tighter perspective view from Amherst Avenue to the bottom right, that shows a closer view of how that is opened up at the ground level. Mr. Pongio commented on that the first floor is significantly open, probably about 65% open when you're looking at the overall massing. So that actually helps with the overall aesthetic. One of the third ways that we develop an overall building massing is the roof line. So again, rather than building a tall box with a relatively flat roof, we've incorporated various roof slopes, and you can see in each face of the building we've incorporated dormers, so it's not just a single roof slope. We've added architectural interest with varied dormers on all sides. We don't envision our buildings having a front or a back. We like to try to do a nice design on all sides of the building. One other thing I want to comment as far as the exterior design, and this relates to the license agreement that we are seeking along Amherst Avenue. Again, understanding that our building face in some portions is on the property line with 0 setback, we are adding some additional architectural enhancements that actually project into the right-of-way. So that is the need for some of the license agreement for some of these features. They include Bermuda shutters on the windows as well as roof overhangs. I mean, overall, we think it's a aesthetically pleasing building, certainly much better than the current condition.
What's the approximate cost of the project?
We believe it's about $4 million.
Thank you.
Including the bulkheads?
Yes. I don't have any further questions of Mr. Petrell, if the board or consultants have any.
Yeah, I have a question. On the columns down on the bottom that are supporting the second and third floor, are there going to be bollards in front of those columns to protect from a car hitting them, taking them out?
No, we don't show them, but it's something we can consider.
Would you or
that.
no? I mean, would you put one in there to protect the columns or no?
Yes, we could do that, I think.
I would think, you know, where there's one space and then there's a column and then there's 2 spaces in a column in that
Although,
respect.
I mean, they're not real tight parking spaces. I think we're 20 feet
9 by
center to
18.
center.
9 by 18.
Typically, a lot of times in parking garages, the column is on the actual
I just happen
sideline
to-
of the, but it's 9 by 18 clear, inside clear of the columns.
I just happened to look at that left
Right.
column, and that's what I was concerned with.
I think we can look at that. What may happen is if you add a bollard further out, it actually increases your turning radius, because you got to go further out. So you might want to, right.
So you think a bollard would be good?
Not at this point in time. I don't think it's needed.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, but I think they'll probably have mechanisms in there to protect the columns.
And these columns are set in from the end of the parking space. It's not like the column is at the end of the parking space where maybe more prone to hitting as you're turning in.
We just went through the auto zone yesterday.
I saw that.
He's shopping for brake pads.
I know we said, we talked about this before, but the side yard setbacks, why, Roger, if this was just a commercial building without an office, would it be 0 setback on the side yard, or would there always be a?
Yeah, you defer to CBD zone and it is 0,
It
I
is.
believe.
Well, so then why
Why
is
is
there
there
variance for the side yard setback?
No residential component?
What's the residential component?
There is none.
You're required to have 10 feet combined. Or 20 feet combined for the WSD district.
So it's not the same as the CBD
Each,
district.
Right.
So were you aware of that when you were designing the building?
Is there required setbacks?
Yeah.
Yes, and this kind of relates a little bit to Mr. Ponzio's testimony about complying with DEP regulations and what we're permitted to build. So as far as fitting in the developer's program, there's really a need to extend the length of the building, and it does relate to, I think Arthur pointed out, the need for providing means of egress stairs at each end of the building that are remote from each other.
Is that a building code, or is that just?
That is a building code issue,
Okay.
yes.
I would just point out that across the street, there is no side yard setbacks for the Maynard's, Tomatoes, Sophia. And there's only about a 2.5-foot setback to the junior side of the building right now. So it's
Right.
consistent with the area.
And if we did increase the side yard setbacks, that means we're taking some of the space in the middle of the building, which is where we have our parking. So, you know, I mean, you really sacrifice program, not even not just the program above, but the program below, a number of parking spaces, and so on.
So if it was tighter, you would lose a parking spot.
Yes. I mean, there are other features that Mr. Pongio indicated that are needed at ground level. So 2 egress stairs, elevator, lobby, service, trash. So we would lose parking.
I think that was an element of discussion when we were talking about the required height of the building, how that was an issue of like how you're going to get in the building. So that a lot of the area that you needed is dedicated to entry into the building.
That's right. Looking at the perspective view, the area to the right, that is basically taking up the entrance lobby, one of the egress stairs, the elevator, and then also the service area to the far right.
And because it's commercial, you need 2 means of egress and egress.
That's right. So the second means of egress is at the opposite end. Again, have to be remotely spaced or remotely located from each other.
Does that elevator goes all the way up to the office building, right?
That's right.
Thank you. David Shropshire. Mr. Shropshire, please state your professional licenses and experiences as a traffic engineer.
I'm a professional engineer and a professional planner in the state of New Jersey and a professional engineer in several other states. Traffic engineering, transportation planning is a specialty. I've testified before approximately 200 municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey, including Margate for the Wawa and I think a couple other applications. And again, the area of specialty is traffic engineering, transportation planning.
I'd ask that the board accept Mr. Shropshire's credentials as a expert traffic engineer.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Okay, are you familiar with the site and the plans for the project?
I am.
And the area?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware how do people get to and from existing establishments on Amherst Avenue in the area of the site?
A variety of ways. Obviously by car, walk, bike, Uber, Lyft, cab, car sharing. And I know from practical experience coming from Ocean City, when I go to Tomatoes, we don't take 2 cars for 7 people. We put them all in 1 car and come in one. So there's definitely behavior related to how you get to this site.
And also by boat?
And by boat
And
also,
by boat.
correct.
Okay. And are you familiar with the parking that's in the area off-site?
Yes.
Okay, good. Based on the anticipated hours of the operation of the uses on the site, could you conclude that the peak demand times for the parking for the office, marina, and the restaurant would be at different days and hours?
Yes, and I think that testimony has already been given, and from a practical standpoint, a weekday office is not going to peak at the same time as a more casual dining evening restaurant, and that's going to peak at a different time than a marina would peak. So each one of these uses has a different peaking time, and therefore you wouldn't have an overlapping of the parking, and certainly this is a shared parking situation, and I believe Mr. Ponzio's testimony with regard to an actual requirement for what you're going to need based on your ordinance is probably closer to that 30 mark than it is 60, just based on the different hours of operations. And again, that's based on your ordinance requirements, maybe not so much based on the actual demand.
Given the anticipated modes of travel to and from the site, is it your opinion that adequate parking is provided on-site and in the off-site parking areas in the area?
Yeah, it was interesting just listening to some of the input from not only Mr. McLaren in his report, stating the obvious, which is in most shore communities, it's hard to meet parking requirements. And what is transpiring is, and I think this is nationally, but we've also seen it in some of the shore communities, is that the ordinances are being revised for specific areas within municipalities where the parking demand cannot be, or the parking supply cannot be provided for the particular uses that are there, and you still want the area to succeed. So the bottom line is what we're finding is municipalities throughout the country are doing what is called eliminating the minimum parking requirements from their ordinances. for specific areas within their municipalities. And we see that from very large cities in the CBDs down to the most recent thing that we've seen is down to Sea Isle City, where in all of their commercial districts, they have eliminated the requirement for any parking related to the commercial aspect within those districts. They still require for residential, which I think would include motel, hotel uses, but related to the commercial uses, zero parking requirement for those commercial uses. Now, why did they do that? Well, they have public parking available. This area has public parking available. There is that combination of uses where you have multiple trip purposes, you have different means of getting to a site. I believe that's similar to this situation in Margate. So what we have found is, with the work that I do along the shore communities, we generally come in and we're asking for very large variances from parking requirements that really don't apply to the areas that we're talking about. And they're generally granted because everybody understands that you don't need that parking based on the public parking that's available.
I have no further questions of Mr. Shropshire.
Next.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation.
Yes. Yes. We need another 5-minute break.
So,
Board members, take your seats, please.
Typically, that's the.
You back on? I think we're back to the point of any further questions or comments from the board. If we have none, we'll move on to public participation. When for public participation, come up and state your name. Before you start talking, be sworn in.
State your
we
name
will
and
start-
address, and I'll swear you.
Name and address, and then be sworn in.
My name is Ed Berger. I live at 9402 Amherst Avenue in Margate.
Mr. Berger, you swear affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I've sat here for the last couple of hours. My home is directly across the street from Integrity Marine and on a diagonal to the development that's being proposed here tonight. I doubt that I am going to be as artful in making my points as Mr. Ponzio was, but I have to take issue with a number of them. I also don't envy the board tonight because I think that what you have to do tonight is to cast the mold on the way you want what little remaining waterfront is left in the city of Margate. Now that the beaches have been totally built up with the dunes and you can't see the ocean from the streets of Margate, this very small 3-block area is now the remaining area where people, John Q. Public, who doesn't own a waterfront home, can actually go wander down the street and see the beach or see the ocean or see the bay. So tonight, for the first time, we get a look at the first suggestion of what's the best way for someone to develop some of this area. By the way, let me just make a point that the Harbor Vista Homeowners Association, which I'm a part of, and there are other members here tonight, are happy that there is development plans for across the street from us. We are tired of looking at Captain Andy's, and we're tired of looking at Integrity Marine. We know that these two buildings are eyesores, and we know that they should be developed. We know that they were distressed properties and nobody wanted them for a while. We're very happy that developers came along and want to invest their money across the street from us. The question is what form does that investment take? Does it take form so they get their highest and best use for them? But the question is their highest and best use the best for the neighborhood? And is it best for the neighbors? At what cost do we develop these 50-foot high buildings, which is certainly not something that we have any control over right now because of the regulations? At what point do we take these 50-foot tall buildings and say, what do they look like? That's what I think we're here to discuss tonight. And I don't envy your position because, truthfully, there's going to be more development on Amherst Avenue. Whatever you go to tonight, I mean, a lot of the heavy lifting for what's going to be going on Amherst Avenue is going on here tonight. It's the first one. The other properties that are up and down Amherst Avenue will probably follow the lead of what occurs here tonight. So you've got another building that you'll be hearing about shortly, as you know, that's being considered for development. You've got the restaurant and area over by Junior's, which with the new zoning can now also become a 50-foot tall development, certainly within the rights of that owner to do that. You have Blue Water Marina up the street the other way, who, although they have a small footprint, is now in a position with the new zoning to put up a 50-foot building. What do you want Margate to look like on this remaining part of the waterfront that's left for us? The very small area that's left for everyone who lives in the area and walks through the area and the people that visit there. What do you want them to see? And I don't envy you guys because it's a pretty building. But is it the right thing, and is it the right stone and the right mold that you want to cast here tonight? As we get into some of the issues, the individual issues that were brought up by the experts that the developer that Sean's working with has here tonight, I think I guess the 300-pound gorilla that was in the room immediately was the parking issue. And I found it interesting that although I, like Rich, was following Art along and felt like he was almost doing a public service by the time he was done by adding a restaurant to the area and putting more pressure on it. But yet, when he comes to town himself to go to the restaurant, make sure that he's not driving his own car. My feeling as the person who sits on the front porch of my own townhouse, the second one in from Sophia's, is that any kind of addition of pressure to the parking on that 4-block area without some sort of consideration, some sort of off-site consideration taken by the developer is completely disregarding the needs of the community and the needs of the existing residents that are in the area and the people that want to come into the area as well. I can agree with Art on one point that the parking spots do start filling up very early in the morning with fishermen, but then throughout the course of the day, it's very rare to see an open spot during season, and certainly the traffic patterns and the gridlock that occurs out on Amherst Avenue in that 3 or 4 block area from 6 o'clock at night until sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning is nonstop. What you're suggesting again is by opening up this restaurant, which, by the way, we don't know what the hours are going to be. We don't know what they're going to be serving. We don't know what kind of music they're going to be playing. We don't know how late the bar is going to be open. We don't know how loud it's going to be. All of the issues that the neighbors have. What's the situation that goes along with the business? We think that as part of you approving a building that is intended to be used as a restaurant where you're being asked to issue significant variances, that these are questions that need to be answered first. You're entitled to have that information, and we think that we as neighbors are entitled to have it also. So if we try and move past the parking issue and move to and there's so many things here to talk about tonight. The promenade, which I think that everybody on Amherst who lives there thinks is a great idea. We think that connecting it would be a great idea. This, unfortunately, I guess is going to be one of those phased-in projects, kind of like we phased in the streetscaping on Ventnor Avenue, where a block got done and then nothing got done for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then another block got done and then nothing got done for another 2 or 3 or 4 years. If we're going to, again, give the developer the license to move his cars out 3 feet into the right-of-way because there's a space to do there in order to put the promenade out in front of the building, I mean, I think that's great if the project is in place to run the promenade from the beachfront, where it is intended to start, down to Lamberti's, where it's intended to end. I don't have a problem with it. A 4-foot wide or 5-foot wide promenade, I think, would be something that everyone would welcome. This, however, is not the case. We're going to have 40 feet of promenade, and then we might have another 30 feet of promenade maybe by the end of next summer, and then who knows by when is the rest of it going to be developed.
Ed, we don't know when the promenade's coming. We have a master plan to design it. If he doesn't incorporate it into his building, there'll never be a promenade there. So any development that goes along, we are insisting that they incorporate the promenade, so when the promenade is finally done, and the city, there's going to be grants. This is a long-time project. If we don't stop it right here, there will never be a promenade. So it's not just a 40-foot promenade. It's where the promenade is going to be This assures that it will be in front of this property.
Rich, does the city have a plan for the city property to have the promenade initiated? Or
Yes.
is it-
Yes, it's been drawn, it's been lighted, it's been everything, but it's all
funded?
concept.
Not funded?
Not funded.
Not funded.
Not funded.
Okay.
But if we don't incorporate this part into it, how are we going to have a continuous promenade unless we force this person and the two other properties there, when they're modified, they have to incorporate the promenade.
Okay.
The mayor and commissioners are very actively pursuing, and I'm sure Commissioner Amadeo would tell you, grant money right now to do that.
Terrific. As I said, the neighbors by and large, I mean, we want to do anything we can. We want to be in favor of things that enhance our neighborhood. We're just
There are
questioning what
drawings
this
and
is.
concepts. This
I've
is
seen it.
available to you.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what it's supposed to look like when it's finished, Rich. I do. I know.
Ed, it's my fault that the building has to be 10 feet out of the ground because of the flood. It's FEMA.
No. I
That's why
understand.
it's such a high structure.
We understand why the structure has to be so
It's
high.
mandatory that the bottom lowest vertical member can't be any lower because of flood.
Jimmy, I understand that, and when the building,
We beat him up so bad. That's why the tape is on the building.
Mhm.
He didn't want to build that high. He would have been happy to have it at grade level.
I'm quite sure.
That's why it took a year just to come out of the ground.
And when we heard that there were plans going up across the street, we knew that those buildings were going to be 50 feet tall. We knew they are. And we know that because of the code that there's nothing we can do about it. But the only thing that we voice our displeasure about, and this is not misdirected, by the way, we know we're going to lose our views. I mean, it's gone already. And I know that the value of my property, has just dropped $100,000, and it sure does. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't want to get in crosstalk.
We don't
I
want to
really
argue
don't.
here.
I
You
understand.
state your point. We have a lot of other people who want to
I know
talk
you
too.
do. I know you do.
And also, anyone else from your organization, everyone's welcome to talk, but don't come up and repeat what he said, please. If anyone comes up to talk, please add something new that we haven't heard.
Okay, let me get back to one or two more things, and I promise I'll let somebody else get up here. To revisit the parking, I also have read the master plan, and in every section of the master plan, it states very specifically about the problems that we're having with the parking overall in the city. It leaves, if you get into the first section under the land use policy, it says that we need to enhance the waterfront special district, certainly, and the end of that sentence is, and address the parking issues. In the circulation policy, it states very specifically about the problems that we have throughout the city and in this area for parking. In the economic policy, it says, again, the problems that we're having with parking in the area. So why would we exasperate this problem any further by allowing someone to come in and bring in another business of a 150-table restaurant without at least having some sort of plan to satisfy or relieve some of this additional parking pressure that they're bringing to bear? So does the developer need to get off-site parking? If you say he does, he does. Or he can have the 4 spots that are out where, but
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
As the Margate Business Association president.
that's not who I'm here as tonight.
What would you like to see done with the old Captain Andy's?
Craig, you really can't ask that question.
Yeah,
At least preface it differently. He is not speaking for the Margate
No, I'm
Business
absolutely
Association.
not speaking for the associations. I'm speaking for
Okay,
myself.
I'm
But
sorry.
as a business person, what would I like to see done there? I think the last thing I'd do there was open a restaurant when somebody tried to open 2 restaurants next door in the last 3 years and failed. I mean, I think that's one thing that I would make a point of as a personal business person. But so in all cases, if you're going to follow the rules or the direction of the master plan in every single case in the master plan and everything except for the sustainability section of the master plan, it focused on the importance of parking in the city and not putting any additional pressure on it, looking for solutions, not adding to it. So the parking aspect is something I'm deeply concerned about. Not knowing what's going to happen with the restaurant as far as the hours it's going to be operating, the type of restaurant that's being operated in there, whether or not there's going to be loud music on the deck at night until 4 o'clock in the morning, whether they're going to have to shut down the music like Sophia has to at midnight because she's adjacent to a residential area is something that I'd like to know about before the city goes ahead and grants variances of convenience to a developer. I mean, even Art, when he was asked before as an engineer, whether or not he thought that there was a hardship involved in these things, he didn't quite get around to saying, under oath that there was a hardship for these. So you have a lot of choices to make tonight. And like I said, I don't envy you for having to make them. It's a tough decision. I myself, spend a lot of time volunteering for the city to try and make sure that Margate's a better place tomorrow, than it is today without doing any damage. I've been doing it for 10 years, and I know a lot of you guys have been doing this for a long time, too. So I hope you'll take my comments into consideration, understand that the people over at Harbor Vista feel very sincerely that we would like to see some sort of development across the street. We're pleased that developers are interested in it, and we hope that you guys, truly hope that you guys, have the foresight, strength, and understanding of the needs of the people in the neighborhood when steering the developers that are going to be submitting plans to you like the plans that are submitted tonight. Thank you very much.
One question. Yes. Mr. Berger, you and your other
Speak
neighbors.
into the microphone, please.
Mr. Berger, you and your other neighbors at Harbor Vista have off-street parking for your units, correct?
The off-street parking for our units are behind our houses, and as a result of that, during not even peak hours, during regular hours, because of the pressure down there, we have a regular stream of cars of people that don't own there, running behind our home on a regular basis.
It's your parking underneath, correct?
I do have a garage.
So this project isn't taking your parking because you already have it at the Harbor Vista, correct?
No, it is not taking my parking spot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Next.
Good evening. My name is Ray Ramito. I live at 9408 Amherst Avenue.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say my displeasure about the comment that was made about the downtrodden area. Feel free to come to my home, have a glass of wine or Diet Coke, and tell me if my home is downtrodden in that particular area. I take exception to that. I also want to congratulate Mr. Ponzio for a fine job in his presentation. I, as a very successful salesperson, appreciated his presentation. I knew what he did, so kudos to him. My issue is very similar to what Ed said, but what I didn't hear from anyone, and this is my concern, is that if you bring that building out, and I hope Mr. Gormley is very successful. I think he's a great man. I've only met him a couple times, but I wish him nothing but the great success. However, what you're saying over here by bringing these properties to the line, to zero, let's say, what are we going to do about the traffic? And we have an expert over here. But what about the practicality of it all? That's my question. And if you take away all that space, where are the handicapped people going to take their wheelchairs or their walkers or the young people that are going to ride their bicycles? Because now you're bringing that whole street much narrow. And all we need to have is to have one child, maybe your child, maybe my child, get hit by a car because he or she didn't have a sidewalk. And you know what? We're going to have a problem with the city because someone's going to put a major lawsuit, and that's my concern. So I'm thinking about the people over here and about the handicapped people. We want everyone to enjoy that area. Not just people who have two healthy legs, but people in wheelchairs, walkers, bicycles, strollers to enjoy it. And if you go all the way onto the street, I hope that nothing happens to any of those people over there. Thank you for your time.
But can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
There is no sidewalk there now. Why are you, I don't understand your point.
Because if we build these additional businesses.
We're providing a sidewalk on the other side of it.
But
doesn't exist.
If you look at from Juniors all the way down, you had mentioned earlier about the planters. If you see the people walking down, and then they have to go out now in front of that building onto the street, there may be an issue. And that is my concern.
But on this property, they're alleviating that issue by directing the people back along the bulkhead, so they won't be walking in the street like they do in front of Junior.
You'd be surprised. What about the people with their bicycles that want to ride the street? What about the moms who want to push their child in a stroller on a sidewalk? There are a lot of different things to consider. And my concern is this. I know we're going to have an open area in the back. I hope that there would be a sign that says open to the public. Because a lot of times people are going to see that and say, I can't go there. Because they'll assume that that's not open to the public. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Rich, is there a sidewalk in front of Lamberti's?
Yes, but the street's narrower. The sidewalk's where the street would be here. It's about, I think, like 10 feet smaller street when you get
And
down
can
there.
I ask Mr. Zeltner, is there a liquor license, or will there be a liquor license, or do we know if there's a liquor license
There's
associated?
no liquor license currently, but there may be.
Are they opting to try to get a liquor license? Yes.
Bar on the plan.
Can I ask a question? Has the developer tried to secure any property in the area for parking?
Sean's not allowed to answer unless he's sworn.
Okay. There was a brief question to Mr. Gormley. He hasn't been sworn in. As to whether the applicant tried to secure parking. Do you want to come up and answer that? I mean, I think the testimony, or did you want to just address that? Has the applicant tried to secure parking? Okay.
The answer's no.
Good enough. Splitting hairs.
Yes.
Nobody else in the public? No, we're not done yet. Was your question answered?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
we're ready for the next.
Anyone else from the public? State your name and be sworn in, please.
My name's Rick DeLuca. I'm an attorney with Cooper Levinson.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Rick DeLuca. I'm an attorney with Cooper Levinson, and I'm here tonight representing Rat Pack LLC, which owns the adjoining property, Juniors. To my left is Lynn Fox. Lynn's one of the principals. And what I'd like to do is just put out one issue which I don't think has been addressed yet, and which we'd like to hear the applicant and the board address as appropriate. And then Lynn will follow up with a little bit of the perspective of why we're asking this question. And the question is, what is the applicant's proposed construction schedule? And there's a lot of assumptions because one doesn't know how quickly you're going to get all the approvals you need, but it's possible when you play it out that they could have in hand all the approvals that are needed as early as the earlier middle part of May, which, if you go right into the project, then has you doing the construction work during the summer. And there's a concern that if the construction did begin during the summer, I'm speaking exclusively of the proposed demolition of the building, you would have basically an active construction site. You would have pile driving. You'd have a lot of vehicles, a lot of dust, commotion, the usual things that attend any construction site of scale. And that, we're concerned, would be really disruptive to Junior's business and probably to the neighborhood as a whole.
Can you address that, Mr. Galantino?
There's no restriction on the demolition. If it's down by June 15th, then it's
So you can't demolish after June 15th?
the moratorium.
That's on demolition.
But there's nothing about construction. The hours are 7 to 6, Monday
Does,
through Friday.
does the applicant have a timetable as far as where they might stand with CAFRA if, best case scenario from their perspective, if it gets approved?
Art? We've applied, we're still waiting for approvals. But Art can probably give a little bit more color on that.
Someone just said it's a bit of an unknown. We're say 3 to 5 months out. Corps of Engineers, CAFRA, and Waterfront Development. So 3 to 5 months. That's the time I can give you right now.
July.
Construction began immediately after that.
What about demolition of the building if you're approved?
We can demolish the building.
Okay.
We could theoretically demolish that now. We're okay with demolishing the building.
Well,
Have that approval.
that's one noise source that'll be gone.
Do that, obviously, we need the ordinance.
Would the intention be, if you got approvals in July, to start immediately?
The intent would be to proceed as soon as we could. with
Okay.
construction.
That bulkhead needs to be
That-
replaced ASAP.
As soon as the building comes down, the bulkhead more or less might collapse. So that's going to happen immediately.
All right.
Second? Yeah, bulkhead first, in a sequence, demo, bulkhead, foundation, construction, maybe tanks and whatnot, and then right to the superstructure.
I think, Mr. DeLipio, your name, DeLipio?
Yes.
I think the bulkhead has to be replaced, because if we don't, we're going to lose our street.
Yeah, and we had the opportunity to talk to some of the applicants, professionals, during the course of tonight's meeting, and we understand that the bulkhead is the beginning point. And I'm again making the assumptions that all of the approvals could be in place as early as May. Maybe it drifts into the summer. And the bulkhead repair would not seem, by its nature, to be as much of a concern to the ongoing summer operations of the businesses in that area. But once you get past that, once you have an active construction site on the upland portion, whether or not they're doing the docks at the same time, it's going to be, disruptive, especially you have a business, as Lynn's going to talk about in a second, where you do have a significant portion of your business is outside during the summertime.
But I don't think this board has any authority over when they can construct or not construct.
Yes, but no. What we would ask is, to the extent the applicant can do it, and because it hasn't been discussed, I don't know what matter of flexibility or what range of flexibility they might have, but we would like for the board to engage them in a discussion of what measures might be taken voluntarily, and then maybe imposed as conditions to minimize the more disruptive characteristics of the construction should it happen, that everything comes into place for them so that they're ready to go at the beginning of summer and would, but for, some voluntary restriction, be operating throughout the summer season.
With that in mind, Ben, do you know how long construction would expected to take once it begins till it's open?
About a year. About a year. Obviously, we're trying to make.
I understand, but
Following
the
season.
point being at that point is if they wait till September, October to start construction, they miss the entire following season, so.
And they'll be constructing during the following season.
Right, exactly. There'll be construction in the following summer, so
But it'll-
one way or the other, you're gonna have, you haven't been sworn in yet. One way or the other, it's gonna be 12 months of construction, so I don't see what difference it makes when it starts or when it finishes. I don't know. You'll get your chance.
I don't want to forget.
That's okay, we'll be sworn in very quickly. State your name and address, please.
Lynn Fox, and I operate Juniors at 9315 Amherst Avenue.
Okay, and do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth,
Yes,
nothing but the truth?
absolutely.
Thank you.
No, what I was going to say is, but the construction next year, next season will be in a different phase and won't be piles being driven down and some shaking and vibrations and dust. We have people who eat outside. I have children. It's mostly children. I'm a little worried, I listened to a lot today. I didn't come with any preconceived notions. I met Sean. We had some nice conversations. I learned more today than I knew before. I learned my electric pole is going to be removed. That was a little disconcerting for about 30 seconds. But I heard with the other applications that safety's a big concern, and I trust you all to look out for our citizens, but I just felt that I, needed to say that, I don't want to repeat myself, but I have people outside and children, and I'm concerned about the heavy construction that occurs in the beginning, so.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Public portion is closed. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
All right.
You've already been sworn in?
Already
Yes,
sworn.
I have.
Yep.
Yeah, Joe Swift.
Joe
Joseph Swift, and I'm a lifelong Margate resident. I've seen the plans. I think this is a beautiful project. I know Mark, the builder, and Sean, and I think Margate's very fortunate to have, this team of people who have the foresight and the resources to actually put something like this together. Because anyone could buy this property, patch it up, and open up for business. But this is going to be something that is going to be a continued renaissance for Margate. Because I think we can all remember when Carmen bought tomatoes. That was the beginning of the Renaissance, and then Sophia's continued with that. Maynard's fixed their place up. They've done a lot of nice things. So Margate is headed in the right direction. I think this is going to be the next level for Margate. This is going to send Margate to the next level that you see, in California, you see in Southern Florida. So I'm very proud to be, part of this, and proud to know these people putting this together. And also, myself and my brothers and sisters, we also own a marina in Margate and Jerome Avenue. And I think this is a great asset for Margate because, as Mr. Ponzio said, there's no place to get gas right now in Margate. If you want to go get gas, you have to go over to Seaview Harbor or up to Atlantic City or Summers Point. So there's a lot of boaters in Margate, a lot of fishermen, a lot of jet skis. So this is going to be a tremendous asset, especially the bait shop. It'll be very nice to take your family, kids, grandchildren on the boat, get off on a nice floating dock, use the bait shop, the bathroom, go get a burger, something to eat. It's going to be great. And I think Ms. Pelosi brought up a great point about the bike rack. So I think you guys should definitely put a bike rack because I think I'll probably be riding my bike there with the kids. So that's the only condition, all right?
You need two bike racks.
Right, yeah, for us. All right, thanks a lot. Good luck.
Other than the bike rack, how would you, if you were going out with your wife, how would you plan to get to this front?
It's not
Pro-
being recorded.
What's wrong?
It's not
You
being
gotta
recorded.
talk in a microphone, please.
Mr. Swift, other than biking there, how would you get to and from the restaurant here if you're taking your wife and friends?
Yeah, if we're going to go out at night, my wife and I, we have the Uber app. So like everyone else of our generation, I think that's definitely what everyone's doing. So Uber, bike, taxi, that's certainly, the parking there, everyone knows, is an issue. And that's part of the attraction to the bayfront area, that whole district there. So I don't think that's going to be a concern. I think the impact here is going to be very marginal for what it's going to bring to Margate, to the whole community. Thank you.
State name and address, please.
Barbara Beck, 9408 Amherst Avenue.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I would like to ask some of these people that have given testimony tonight, exactly at what time have they ridden their bikes to have dinner during the summer on Amherst Avenue? I would love to see a parade of bicycles come down the street with the hordes of traffic that are out there, because I don't see a lot of people riding their bicycles to dinner at night. Please keep that in mind. There are a lot of things that could happen, but do they happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? One more?
How you doing? Steve Triana from Maynard's Cafe, Margate, obviously.
Steve, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Sean. I think it's going to be a beautiful project. There's always been parking problems in Margate. Obviously, I could take it back to 1960 when my dad built Gables. There was no parking at all. But I also have concern for my neighbors, and I wish them all the luck in the world. And there's going to be a problem, but I think we could alleviate a lot of the problems. There is a lot of bike traffic. Whatever you said was a little different, but we get a ton of bikes at night. And I was telling Mr. Gormley at 10, 11 o'clock at night, I mean, we have our dinner hour, and we do get a lot of kids, and it's a lot of bikes. But at 11 o'clock at night, you could shoot a cannon down Amherst Avenue. I am the #1 Uber pickup in South Jersey, #2. We're got to beat us out by 1. So we encourage people not to drink and not to drive. And you'll see on a certain busy night, there'll be 10 Ubers sitting down the street waiting for a phone call. That's our concern, is the drinking and driving. Parking is always going to be a problem, but yet I agree with Mr. Berger and the other neighbors, and I feel for them, just like anything else I would do. I'm very concerned about my neighbors. But I think the project's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a lot better than it looks now. I think it's a long time coming, and I just wish Mr. Gormley all the luck in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Going once. Public portion is closed. Any other further comments or questions from the board?
Yes. So I know that the mic is on. I think the project is beautiful. I know that Tomatoes has a parking lot. I know that Sophia's was forced at some point
At
to acquire a
gunpoint?
parking lot. Yeah, at gunpoint, Roger Rubin's gunpoint.
Is that what you said?
No, at some point.
Oh, at some point.
At gunpoint. That's before you were on the board. That's before he was on the board. I know Lamberti's has a parking lot. I know there's a city lot on Washington Avenue. Have we thought about, I know you can buy property somewhere close by to facilitate off-street parking, or there, you can find something. I don't know if we could valet it, if we considered valet parking to the city lot, which closes at 10, and maybe the city could extend those hours. I'm just trying to think of alternatives. I want, other than starting a rickshaw business, or I'm trying to think of an alternative, because I think there's a lot of traffic, and I realize Margate has a parking problem. I lived here, I grew up here, I'm in business here. But I'm trying to think of a way to alleviate that, and I know that the other restaurants did acquire parking. So I'm just putting that out there. Has there any consideration been given to that?
That
Or
question was to
shrinking
you,
the
Mr. Zeldner.
restaurant, or something to alleviate that number 58, 56, whatever it is.
Right now, we don't believe there's any parking available, so that's zoned. So no consideration's been looked at.
Anyone else on the board? Mr. Manos, would you read the motion?
Sure. Before we do that, I do want to make reference, there's been some testimony about this 3x100 strip in the Amherst Avenue right-of-way, and it's mentioned in Roger's report. Did get a letter this afternoon dated February 22nd, 2018 from the mayor. I'll just read it into the record. Dear Planning Board members, please accept this letter on behalf of the governing body, the City of Margate, to confirm that the applicant, Harbor Bay LLC, has permission to include as part of its application before Margate Planning Board the area located in the Amherst Avenue right-of-way being 3x100 for the project site. This authorization is for the purposes of allowing the applicant to move forward with its application and in no way binds the City of Margate to sell, lease, or license the subject area. The governing body requests that the board consider the application to include this strip of land, and that you provide your opinion and advice concerning the applicant's request to include this area as part of the project site, and it's signed by Mayor Becker. So I just wanted that as part of the record. We kind of alluded to that right-of-way issue. And then framing the motion, before I do so, it's going to be, just so everyone's aware, it's going to be a long motion, so it's going to be for preliminary and final major site plan approval, a number of C variances, which I'll go through at some length. That'll take me a little bit. And then the only waiver request is for the traffic impact study, and then there'll be a number of conditions, which I'll mention at the end. And then, Roger, just briefly, before I frame the motion, in your report on page 4, just the two front, what's the difference between those 1 and 2? One's to the building. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Don't forget the fence, too.
Yeah, I know.
That was just a 125.7 to 0.
To 0, okay. Okay. And we have 9 members voting, we'll need 5 affirmative votes. So what we'll need is a motion for preliminary and final major site plan approval, together with the following C variances: a front yard setback to the building of 0 feet where 10 feet is required, a side yard setback on the left side of 3.5 feet where 8 feet is required, a side yard setback on the right side of 2.5 feet where 8 feet is required, a side yard setback to the deck on the left side of 3.5 feet where 8 feet is required, combined side yard setback of 6 feet where 20 feet is required, parking, a variance for where 60 spaces are required and 4 are proposed, and there's a number of sign variances. For the style of the sign, where our ordinance permits only wall or fascia signs and a roof-mounted signs proposed. For the number of signs facing a street, the ordinance permits 1, and they are proposing 2. For the maximum size of a sign facing parking, the maximum permitted is 12 square feet, and they are proposing 62.91 square feet. For the max, then there's a variance for the maximum number of signs facing parking, where 1 is permitted and 2 are proposed, and then there's a variance for the sign, for the distance between the sign and the siding and the side of the building, where the minimum distance is 10% of the linear frontage in feet, which is about 9 feet, and 3 of the signs, sign numbers 2, 3, and 4, are proposed to be less than 9 feet, and there's a variance for fence height, where 8 feet is proposed and 4 feet is the permitted maximum. The waiver request is from the submission of a traffic impact study, and the conditions will be that the applicant will satisfy all other checklist items in the Remington and Verdict report dated February 2nd, 2018, with the exception of that one waiver that I just mentioned for the traffic impact study. The applicant will comply with all general review comments in the Remington Verdict report dated February 2nd, 2008. The applicant will comply with all representations it made during the course of the hearing, and the applicant will comply with any other conditions set forth in the Remington and Verdict report dated February 2nd, 2008, and Mr. McLaren's report dated February 21st, 2018, February 2nd, 2018, and February 21st, 2018. I think I said 2008, unless they were addressed or already modified on the record during the course of the hearing. And as the board always does, state the reasons for your vote as best as possible.
Matt, if I could add one thing.
Sure.
The recommendation to the governing body for the 3 by 100 foot strip, part of the resolution.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a condition.
I mean, that's sort of it's a condition.
Condition.
It's suggesting that we make a recommendation as how to handle it. I look at it as more as between the applicant and the city as to what the city is willing to give you, I mean, unless I'm missing something.
Right. The planning board doesn't have the jurisdiction to.
Oh, certainly not to grant, but to recommend, I believe you do have that power.
Sure, I mean, we can certainly recommend that. What are you suggesting? I mean, it's in the testimony. They're going to have to work something out as a condition of approval to the satisfaction of the city, whether it's a lease, whether it's the vacation.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
All right, so amended and
I made the motion.
And I second.
Tom Collins?
I know I've said this a few times when it comes to this particular area, but this board up here spent collectively an awful lot of time over the last couple of years working with some of the professionals we heard tonight to develop a master plan that was going to be good for the city, not just today, but 50 years out. This project here fits that plan. It enhances the neighborhood. It is going to stimulate growth in Margate. It's going to stimulate Margate being a community that we want to be. Mark did an excellent design. I couldn't have envisioned anything better than what you've done right there. And through the course of the master plan, every time we put in about the parking, CIO handled the parking the way we're talking about handling the parking. They're going to eliminate parking because you just can't get it. We can't make a floating garage. We can't make our land any bigger. And trying to buy $1 million homes to put up a parking lot doesn't work. If a business is to succeed, you guys are going to have to find a way to accommodate your parking. If you don't, you won't succeed. But that's a business decision. I think the the hardship here is that most of our ordinances don't really apply, like a corner lot you've got the bay. So you're asking for variances on the bay that really are designed for on the land. And I think that's very de minimis, and I think it's a shame that you have to do that. And the aesthetically, the signs and just the way you're laying the whole thing out, it's very tasteful, and I think it's really going to be good for what we're looking to do. So I vote in favor.
Clem Wozleski?
Well, I wonder how many of the applicants, experts have spent a lot of time on a summer evening on Amherst Avenue along the bay. I know there have been times when I've driven down there with my wife to go to dinner, and after riding around for a while, not finding a parking place within 3 or 4 blocks, I go down to Dino's, buy a sub, and go home. The project does have a lot of good going for it. It's a very interesting concept. It's well planned, interesting architecture. I'm all for business development in the city. We certainly need it, and this could be a good one. Except for the one significant problem, which is obviously the parking. You got to blow through a lot of smoke from the testimonies to confront it, but the parking is needed. The other restaurants in the area, Tomatoes, Stephen Cookies, Lamberti's, Sophia's, they all have the same problem. They all addressed it. Most of the effort here relative to parking was trying to avoid it. Some of the statements that were made in the application kind of go further to abort it. I'll read from one of them. Quote, "The proposed redevelopment of the property will have absolutely no negative impact on the surrounding properties." Another one, "Proposed redevelopment of the property will be proposed redevelopment of the property will be a positive enhancement in every single respect over existing conditions." That's nonsense. For the parking problem only, I have to vote no on the application.
Rich Patterson?
As I go through the variances, there's too many variances to hit each one, but if I look at the setback requirements, most of our commercial properties, I know it's a different zone, but require 0 setbacks. The 0 setback on the front of this building is, again, 10 feet off the ground. The fact that you can see through this building to the bay, I understand what Mr. Berger is stating, that this sets a precedent for the 2 other properties that can develop here, the one to the left of the property, one to the right of the property. But I feel if you took the 3 properties existing now and elevated them to the FEMA requirements, you would have the same problem that you have with the new properties that are going to be there, only it would be ugly. Parking is a major problem, and I think the biggest argument against this project is that Sophia and Tomatoes and Lamberti's and Stephen Cookies have parking lots. They got those lots because an old motel at a bad time was torn down. They existed. There was places to put them. They were not the billion-dollar properties we have now that nobody can afford to buy enough land to put a Tomato-sized parking lot or a Stephen Cookie-sized parking lot. It is impossible to meet our restrictions, and I know when Mr. Shropshire talked about Sea Isle City getting rid of the requirement, we couldn't do that. I mean, that would mean that Stephen Cookies could sell their parking lot, or anybody else that had a parking lot could get rid of it. We can't go backwards from what we have, but going forward, with every application, we're not going to find parking in Margate. We approved a case last month where the paper said I was joking. I wasn't joking. It would have been safer without the parking that they provided. It's just a fact of life, not in Margate, but in any community. What we've been working on since Sandy and going forward with and coming up with this bayfront development, the entire bayfront can't be developed. These 3 properties can be developed as they are now. This fits in exactly with, and we had businesses come in, we had realtors come in, we talked to everybody in town when we put together this proposal, not only for the whole town, but especially the Washington Avenue corridor and the Bayfront corridor. Everybody in town had the chance to be involved in this, and this, to me, fits in exactly with what we're looking for. I don't look at that 60 parking spaces. I can't agree with Mr. Capaldi that it's 70 now and it's going to be 60, so it's better, but I don't think it's going to hinder the neighborhood. The neighbors have the parking, their own parking that they have. I don't know if Mr. Swift is still here. Is he still here? I thought he could show Mr. Wesleski how to use Uber, but that won't work. But I don't know if it works with a flip phone, but I vote yes on the project.
Jim Galantino?
It's a tough call. I mean, 2 years ago, when I put the red sticker on the building that it was unoccupiable because it was unsafe, because the piling were totally gone, I felt really bad because I felt like I was putting another business out of business. And to me, it was the worst day of my life because I felt like that was a true business that really serviced the citizens of Margate, because it sold bait, it sold gas, it sold fishing rods. I felt bad. You know, Roy tried to keep it open as long as he could, but he just couldn't maintain it. We tried jitneys. Remember last year we tried to put jitneys down to go give people parking, and so we offset the parking and was shot down. We tried, some of the restaurants have shuttles down there right now, which is a good asset if they're able to get a restaurant that has a shuttle. But I see a lot of people here, a lot of businessmen, a lot of attorneys, a lot of contractors. And you're here for a reason. You're here to see prosperity and goodness of the city going in a positive nature. Now, Ed, I love you, the greatest guy in the world, and I truly understand where you're coming from. But I think there's no way that we can shrink the building down to be level where you could actually see above it. It just didn't work. Even if we put residential there, it still would have been, Christ, from V zone, it'd be still about 50 feet, right? With the ridge and all that. I mean, it's crazy. As to it's a preliminary final site plan. Is that what it is, Leo?
Major.
Preliminary and final major site.
For C variances for front yard, side yard, combined setbacks, and parking and signs and fence, I vote in favor.
Margaret Gubernalty?
There are quite a few variances here, many variances. I understand that the DEP forces a lot of these variances, and I think it is consistent with the area. I have no issue with the signs. I think the building architecturally is beautiful. I believe that that area should be developed. I don't want to see nothing happen there. It is a relic. It is in need of repair. My concern is it the poster child for redevelopment or overdevelopment? That's my concern. I feel like we're trying to put many things, 10 pounds of sand in a 5-pound bag. We have, the gas is great, the bait shop is wonderful, we're trying to make a promenade. But like Ed said, you have to think about what you want Margate to look like. I think the restaurant idea is awesome. I'm just afraid that it's too big. It's too overdeveloped. This isn't Las Olas. We don't have parking meters. we didn't look at considering other areas to park. It wasn't even looked at, it wasn't even a consideration. While I want it to be developed, while I think it's a beautiful building, I think we're trying to do too much there. And I think the parking is an issue. And people come down here to relax, and they want to walk, and they want to look at the beach, and they want to look at the bay, and they want to go out to dinner. But they don't want to have to fight traffic to get there. They don't want to have safety issues. I also think there's not enough information about the restaurant and what's going to be there or what the plan is. While I want to see it developed, and I know there's big investments being made here, I just feel that there could be some changes to what's being put there. So I am voting not in favor of the application.
Craig Palmisano?
What would go there? I miss my old tackle shop. But we're gonna have a partial tackle shop there, if it's approved. It's a great plan, it's ambitious, it's bayfront, it's what we're looking for in the master plan to develop that area. It has to be that height, it can't be much smaller. All our houses are coming in at 40 feet, 30 feet plus base elevations. So the height is nothing we can really control. It is what it is. They've addressed the pedestrian safety for me, for my concerns, about children and parents walking to and fro on the promenade. And I would like to see some identification so people can know where to go. The site plan, the major site plans and the front yard setbacks and the sign setbacks, the variances for the signs are all okay. The fence is okay, the way they have that plan for the fence. The parking is an issue, but where are you going to get parking? Where will it come from? You're not gonna buy a home for $1 million and tear it down and get 10 spaces. It is what it is. Everybody fights for parking spaces down there. I fight for one for my boat dock every Saturday and Sunday. And it is what it is. Years ago, we used to ride around the blocks to go to the bars, and you had to park 5 blocks away sometimes. It was just constant looking for a parking space. And that's kind of what it's going to be a little bit, going for parking spaces. If you want to go to the restaurant, you'll find a place to park. So I'm going to vote in favor of the project.
Remy Pelosi?
I agree with basically everything everybody said. My issue is with the parking. I think the project is beautiful. I think it'd be a great addition. I'm concerned about the restaurant failing because how are people going to get there? And I know there's Uber and I know there's bikes and I know there's public, taxis and all that, but how are you going to have 149 seats and 4 parking spaces and retail and a bait shop? I think it's just too big. I have no problem with the design. I have no problem with the signage or the setbacks. My issue is with the parking, because every other restaurant does have parking. Can you lease space from the city? Can you valet and put cars somewhere else? I think that needs to be explored because I think it is important, because I can't ride my daughter to a restaurant. I have to drive her there, and she's in a wheelchair. And how am I going to get her there, and how am I going to park? There's one handicap parking spot. Everybody's got a handicap hang tag, so where do I park? So I think there's that's a big issue for me. So unfortunately, that's the reason I have to vote against the project.
Ron Grupo?
Okay, thank you. My feelings on this are that that particular building and the one next to it and that area of the bay, I think the bay right now is one of our largest assets in the city of Margate. And I think that those buildings that are there now don't do any good for Margate or for visitors or for anyone that wants to enjoy the bayfront. The parameters of what can be built there are really determined by FEMA and others as far as the elevations and those sort of things. So I think that the onus for that is being determined by others. What's before us is, do we think that the project is a good project for the bayfront area, for the city of Margate, for the residents in that area, and for the long haul? My personal feeling on that is that Mr. Gormley is investing $4 million or more, that he thinks that it is, and his team thinks that it is, and the parking is what it is. You know, the other restaurants do have parking lots, but they were able to acquire them at a time when there was space available. Now there isn't really any space available. We live on an island. We can't make more ground. We have what we have. I think the project is beautiful. I think that it's going to enhance the area. I think that it's going to be a positive long haul. It's going to encourage other investors to take a look at that area and hopefully get some of the other buildings up to the caliber that we want the bayfront area to be. I appreciate the fact that people have come here and expressed their opinions about the parking and the inconveniences that might occur to them, and I certainly sympathize with them. But when I look at that area, I have a boat that I keep at a dock over there also. That particular area of the bayfront needs to be fixed. And I think that this is the first step in that project, and I vote yes to approve everything.
Mike Richmond?
I really wish there was more consideration about the parking, because obviously that's the elephant in the room, like that was already stated. When I vote on a case, I like to hear what the people that actually live in the neighborhood have to say about it. Ed made a lot of good points. I thought he was really articulate. But also, there's a lot of businesses in that neighborhood. And by either speaking like Steve did or not speaking like some of the other business owners that are here did, I'm assuming that they're pretty much on board with the project. And it is true, when I first came in, the parking thing was really bothering me, and then the whole thing about all the other restaurants having lots, but, these days, to buy something I actually drove around the neighborhood and looked at possibilities, and then you have these people that live next door. If you buy a house and tear it down and put parking there, what are they gonna say about it? You know what I mean? Especially if it's a couple blocks away, so I'm gonna vote in favor of it.
Application passes 6-3.
We have any business?
Thank you very much for your time.
Motion to adjourn, second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned.